Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the second edition of the Black and White podcast right here on Kissme stream. And boy, we have one hell of a panel for you here tonight, and the topic of today's podcast is going to be looking at the configs that have been used in the competitive community for the past since pretty much the beginning of time. I am Rails Barlow, of course, co-hosting here with Kissme, and actually, usually he's on the panel that we have, but instead he is technically considered as a guest here. We have Mr. Jacob with us. How are you tonight?
I'm doing wonderful.
We have Mr. Hank, aka Mr. Prodigy Sim. How are you today, sir?
Pretty good, my friend.
Oh, God. And then we also have Blade here. How are you, Blade?
I'm doing excellent.
Wonderful. And finally, staying up extremely late just for us, we have the one and only Mr. Dragon.
Well, feeling comatose, but still hanging in there.
Oh my God. It sounds like he's about to pass out. So yeah, as it was last week, we do consider this to be quite an open forum here, so viewer discretion is advised because we have one hell of a panel here tonight. And as I said, the topic of today would be to talk about the configs which have been used, thank you, Jacob, in the past here for competitive Left 4 Dead 2. And Jacob's going to start off with a question. What's your question, Jacob?
This is really off topic. I'm really sorry, but it just came to me and I have to ask. Dragon, have you ever considered making a mentoring group and calling it How to Train Your Dragon?
Perhaps. It's an idea in the making.
I would join it.
Wow, we're on a high point. Holy shit.
I'm sorry. I wanted to ask before I forgot it because I thought it was a really sweet joke. Thanks.
It's
Anyways,
real bad,
back to
boys.
you, Rails.
You're wrong.
How to Train Your Dragon?
Back to you, Rails.
Train your okay.
I don't.
It's a movie, dude.
I know that, but Kissme seems extremely confused right here.
I am.
Kissme's always confused.
How are you tonight, Kissme? I introduced you as well, but didn't give you a chance to speak.
I'm doing fairly well, and yeah, I'm going to go ahead and throw that out once again. Viewer discretion is advised heavily for this episode because things will only start high and can only go lower.
Yeah, really. I mean, that's how it's going.
Like
What,
hands.
Jake?
We're gonna start high. Never mind. Go ahead.
Oh man! All right, so we're only like 2 minutes in here, and we've already almost lost all control. But we got it back. We're back together now. So yeah, we have a panel of the people here who have put their time and their effort into really developing the history of competitive Left 4 Dead 2 through the way in which the game is played. And I guess the best place to start in a situation like this would be near the beginning. So I'm going to toss this right over, flaming and hot like a potato, right into the hands of Prodigy Sim. Now, Prodigy, a lot of people know you, and I've actually seen screenshots from you actually on your old version of some website that showed the original changes that were made to the vanilla edition of Left 4 Dead 2, where things like changing the tank and witch to every map was like a new thing that came in here, and a lot of people really don't know where all that stuff came from. So I'm going to throw the very base question over to you, and then you can answer it however you like, but where exactly did the idea of playing competitive Left 4 Dead 2 start?
Oh gosh, you see, the thing is, okay, point of information first of all. Blade, haven't you technically been around competitive Left 4 Dead longer than me? I feel like that's the
It wouldn't
case.
be by much, but
Did you come around
possibly.
the start of Left 4 Dead 2 then?
well, I mean, I was playing competitive Left 4 Dead 1.
Yeah,
I played
so-
on
so-
SIBO config and whatnot. So,
So
Well, hey,
Blade actually
If we want to
outranks
start
me in
there,
seniority.
whoa, if he outranks you, then screw this. We're not going to limit this to Left 4 Dead 2. Blade, tell us about Left 4 Dead 1 configs then.
okay. Well, my knowledge isn't very what's the word?
Extensive.
Extensive, I guess would be, but I mean, it's just like there's holes here and there because I remember it was mostly just a thing I played with my friends at the time, and then I remember just being really frustrated because I had hosted a server and I just played. And I remember I felt like when I was playing Infected, I ran into like walls of auto shotguns, and that's still true today. If you play public versus in Left 4 Dead 2, you're running into walls of auto shotguns, and you're really sad. So we saw these things, and it's just like anything to change the game to make it a little easier for the Infected. Anything I would have been happy with. I wasn't really in anything in particular. So then I'm not sure if anything preceded SIBO config, but I remember SIBO config was very prevalent in a lot of public servers and a lot of competitive servers. Basically, what it did was it just made it so there are no extra med kits outside the safe room, but it was with a console config. I believe it was in the game from the beginning, but it was just like no med kits outside the safe room. Take every map that Valve would allow it. It just depended. Like I don't think you could get the tank on the No Mercy 5 and whatnot. And beyond that, it was just pretty much plain vanilla. It did make it a lot easier because for the Infected because of the lack of medkits. But beyond that, there wasn't really a whole substantial amount of improvement. I believe that config sat around for a very long time. There were back when Left 4 Dead 1 was extremely popular. They ran a lot of tournaments on either vanilla or SIBO config, and then we moved into. There may have been something in between, but after that I remember Frustians, and Frustians is what is closer to what we know as things like Compoggle and Pro Mod, which would be all pills. I'm not sure if their T2s were removed in Frustians originally.
I think they were eventually removed from Frustians. That was still part of it, but I think they were reduced or something at one point. I don't know.
They were single pickups? I can't remember off the top of my head.
They got knocked down to single pickups, but that was for literally 2 or 3 weeks, and then they were completely removed after that. It was a very short time frame. A lot happened in the first month that Frustrations came out. And actually, I tried getting him, but I couldn't find him anywhere to actually get in touch with him.
So, I remember the most prevalent thing about Frustians, the most things that stood out to me were there absolutely no medkits, and that was quite a substantial change to anybody who was used to playing public versus for God knows how long.
Right, I mean, and then those people had to get used to suddenly not playing with those medkits and adjusting to what it's like just to have the pills, so that's where we first really saw the major change to the health stuff, if I'm right.
Yeah, and of course also having to get used to tanks on maps where they normally weren't used to tanks. Dead Air 1, I think it was not fully... I don't think it was possible to have a 100% spawn chance, even with Sivo config. I don't remember off the top of my head. I know there were certain areas like that, like No Mercy 5 was definitely the one that stands out in my head the most. But Dead Air 1, I remember just having to find these new strategies to deal with these really early tanks, like tanks that would spawn the minute you passed the little wooden plank or whatever. And it was just really interesting and making the game more difficult for the survivors. And that's basically where everything started. Like I said, I know there are a few gaps here and there, but if I remember, the basic point of contention was SIBO, Frustians, and then onwards to things like Rotoplin and whatnot.
So timing-wise, Frustians, though, came out, Left 4 Dead 1 was only out for, a year before Left 4 Dead 2 came out?
Yeah, almost exactly a year.
And Frustians came out pretty close to the launch of Left 4 Dead 2, I believe, anyway, right? Does that sound right to you guys?
Yeah, because I remember the summer when I first came around, that's when my time got caught hacking, and he got caught hacking using a auto shotgun through a wall on Death Toll Finale, yeah. And that was the summer, so yeah, Frustrations didn't come out until after the summer, at the earliest.
Okay, so maybe it had a few months before Left 4 Dead 2, at most, it sounds like.
Almost positive it was August 2009, if I remember correctly. So yeah, it would be the late summer. But yeah, and I remember that was the first system that we really had a pausing system. I believe Frustians added the F pause and the F unpause system because he wanted to attach Frustian, or F, of course, to the console commands.
Of course.
Yeah.
But it was really interesting because I don't think we ever had a system for pausing before that. Of course, the commands were still in the game, but we couldn't take advantage of them really until we started tapping in the source mod and whatnot. And through source mod, we just have gotten a lot of advantages through, as you've seen with things like Pro Mod and Compoggle and whatnot.
So then, when those, we can kind of a little bit of a road off of here, side road, I guess, from the main track of explaining how the configs have come through history. What was the average reaction of a player who went from, I guess, playing on first a normal to then switching to that competitive config? Were people excited about it, or were they still kind of hesitant?
If I remember correctly, they were usually pretty hesitant, right?
I only know experiences after in Left 4 Dead 2. I don't really know about the average person, but I know amongst competitive players, it was seen as really exciting for a lot of people. There was a point when Left 4 Dead 2 came out, we started out on a Sivo-like config that still had medkits and medkits and tier 2s and whatnot. And then as Frustian was gaining popularity in Left 4 Dead 1, somebody made this Metafogl config, and they started removing tier 2s and playing with only tier 1s. And I remember seeing forum posts on L4D now where competitive players were saying things like, this makes Left 4 Dead fun again. This is so much more fun and challenging. And I think, at least in competitive spheres, since everybody was essentially on an equal playing field, the added challenge of only using tier 1 was definitely well put it? It was well received. Yeah, well received by the competitive community for sure. For average players, I know that removing tier 2 was generally not very. You couldn't put up a pub server that removed tier 2. People would hate it immediately.
Right.
But in general, I know I ran a bunch of friends only servers that used modified Sivo configs, and I think a lot of people were open to the idea of making things a little easier for infected, just in general.
Right, and then I have to ask, the scoring system. Now, I obviously came in way late in the game, no pun intended, into Left 4 Dead 2 and stuff like that, but did any of these actually take health bonus scoring into account, or was it still just a Left 4 Dead 1 scoring system?
Well, the Left 4 Dead 1 scoring system had health bonus, so that
Right.
was actually, when you came into Left 4 Dead 2, that was gone, and that was like a huge point of contention, and made a lot of the competitive matches really, really awkward because of the lack of like a scaling scoring system. But health bonus came out pretty quickly in Kogle, around the same time that Tier 2 were removed, and most of the contention was about how certain maps, the same kind of things we hear today, you know, people talk about getting map forward. Those sorts of complaints about health bonus have been there for a long time, but I think in general, everybody prefers that over the vanilla scoring system.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the vanilla scoring system is just those obvious survival bonuses. So then, as you just said, and this is, I guess, where both Blade and Kissme can answer these questions with the early advancements of Left 4 Dead 2. So then Left 4 Dead 2 comes out, brand new game. We have a split that happens between the Left 4 Dead 1 and the new Left 4 Dead 2 communities then due to the fact that half the community, or not half the community, but some people in the community wanted to obviously boycott the second game. What happened to the competitive kind of play then?
Oh, gosh.
Kind of shitfest.
Yeah, it became a shitfest.
There was so much
It was
hate.
a nightmare.
It was literally take the community we have now and magnify it. Like literally over half the community hated the other half. And there was really no real clear reason why. It was just because some people preferred 2 over 1 and some preferred 1 over 2. And it really divided the community. Like it was like you wouldn't expect it to have that much of an effect, but it did. It was really interesting to see, even though it was kind of hellish.
So to get a bit of historical perspective, I'd say that there were like 3 early Left 4 Dead 2 tournaments, right? We had the Civo Double Barrel tournament, which had parallel versus and scavenge tournaments going on.
Oh, wow.
Which were on, I want to say they were vanilla, but I think they were actually the Civo config of some sort.
Yeah.
They might have actually been vanilla. Did you play in those, Kissme?
Yeah, I was around for. I think that was Civo. The Civo tournament I wasn't in, but the Newegg and then the Alienware I was in both of those.
Right. Yeah, so the Civo not as sure about. Definitely vanilla scavenge. Or no, they had some modifications on the scavenge. Very light, just like ready up and stuff.
You remember what 51 did during that tournament?
Oh,
Yeah,
God.
yeah.
Oh, God.
But
Please,
out of
Can we not talk about that?
No,
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 my
it's
God.
not bad. This is for the betterment of the community. We're giving a history lessons here, so you got to include the wars. Anyway,
so,
back to you.
so
Kissme.
out of those 3 tournaments, basically the Alienware one went pretty well. I think most people would agree that the Alienware one had a config that was relatively bug free. The results turned out pretty well, but the Newegg one was riddled with like dispute issues and config bugs and stuff because they were using a really early version of Kogle. And the Civo Double Barrel one had huge amounts of like. First of all, the scoring system made it pretty difficult for teams to, feel like they deserved that the results of the matches were particularly accurate. And secondly, there was a huge issue with like some of the teams getting disqualified based on this Area 51 scavenge match that Kissme is referring to. So like those first 2 tournaments going badly. And partially maybe because of the split in the community, but mostly just because like the competitive support for this game was so new and fragile. There was that was a pretty strong downfall of the community right then, and I think a lot of the Civo admins left after that point.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't Alienware actually use the Civo config for the Alienware tournament? Because I thought they had a partnership.
The Civo config, yeah.
The Civo config took basically all the CVARs that we have in Left 4 Dead 1 and just tried to apply them to Left 4 Dead 2 because they didn't say that the CVAR didn't exist. They just assumed it worked, but a lot of it, Valve changed the ways things work, so it just didn't. Sometimes medkits would just be there because they were just put in the map. They were just physically a part of the map, and it was a lot different from how Left 4 Dead 1 works.
Yeah, so we had there were some competitive changes. There was definitely a ready up, I believe, in all of these tournaments. So I mean, there was some level of configuration, but for the most part, it was very young, and not very well. It didn't have a lot of playtesting before it was given the trial by fire.
Right. Okay, so that means that's the very earliest part, and I was informed exactly of what 51 did during the scavenge match by
Yeah.
a former member of Area 51.
So
They
the story that I understand is that earlier in the versus tournament, one team had been given a forfeit loss because of a scheduling issue of some sort, and the circumstances around that were such that they thought people felt like the admins should have given them a chance to play the match later or something like that, and the admins were just enforcing, no, the match has to be played by this time because of how these other set of circumstances were. This team's getting a forfeit loss, and that upset a certain number of teams or something. And so in a publicly shoutcasted scavenge match between Area 51 and I think it was Veer AI, or one of the Veer teams, I don't remember what that stands for, VIR.
Yeah.
They were supposed to have a publicly shoutcasted scavenge match, and they went into the server and basically sat and ready up for an incredibly long time. It was eventually revealed that they were dicking around playing music in HLDJ, and I don't know, just basically dicking around the whole time. And eventually, after almost an hour of waiting for the game to start, the casters got frustrated, told the CEVO admins about this, said, we're out of here. This is stupid. And the whole thing was, all of these teams got, I don't know if they got disqualified or what, but after that, I don't think that there was another, scavenge cast. This was by, Ponage TV was doing the casts then, and there's actually a lot of, there was a lot of sort of business interest around the game still, and, all of the people who were putting in their time towards that end just sort of disappeared after that point.
And it wasn't just that. Even at the end of the match, 51, they already lost the match. There was no way they could win. So they took the last can, and it was on DK1. And they actually took the last can. They ran all the way out to the highway, and they just sat there holding the can. Because in scavenging,
God.
the can has to be on the ground for 3 seconds for the round to be over. And they just held onto the can for literally a half
I think
hour
that might have been a different one than I'm thinking.
That was a different one, because
the one
Cool
that I
Jerk-
saw was on Swamp Fever.
Cool Jerk just messaged me and said it was Swamp Fever, and they all jumped into the swamp and left.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's a different one.
I remember seeing them all sitting in the boat dock on the Swamp Fever scavenge map, and I don't know, jumping around.
So
and
that
shit.
obviously wasn't a good way for some Left 4 Dead PR to go out in any way, shape, or form when you have what's considered to be one of the teams who's being, obviously on a public spectrum. If that kind of stuff happened today, obviously it'd be extremely detrimental, and I assume that's the same thing that happened back then.
Yeah, just imagine seeing that in I wouldn't look at Left 4 Dead, but think about another esport like CS:GO. Imagine a couple of the top teams, who are actually sponsored teams, decided that they wanted to stage a public protest of something during the match, and they didn't make it clear to anyone that it was a protest. So they instead of it actually, it just wasn't well done as a protest even. So it just pissed off a bunch of people, wasted a bunch of people's time, and so many spectators like myself were kind of shocked and
Right. So
very disappointed by it.
Moving on from those were played on, and I believe another thing that CJ said, because he's watching the podcast and he was messaging us, he's putting in his input for somebody who was definitely back there. He said that Surgical had some involvement in the development of this as well, the config?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Blade?
He was
Pushing really hard for Kogle. Like I said, we sort of had a back and forth in terms of config, because a lot of people I believe Alienware Arena, like I said, had some form of config, but it wasn't what Kogle was. And Kogle was
It was
probably
the CEVO config, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, it was
the
It was
earlier
specifically
version.
called that.
Yeah, as we noted earlier, some of the CVRs that we took from the CEVO config didn't work because of how Left 4 Dead 2 was designed, and we all preferred Kogle because it was much closer to Fruscians, which we were all gotten used to, because there was, I think it wasn't very long before, Fruscians and Left 4 Dead 2 came out, but we were all really used to Fruscians. We'd already pretty much gotten used to how it was played. So we got here, and then we went all the way back to some weird health bonus. We started, 25 times 4 auto shotguns, med kits, and then they tried to change it. We used to have 100 per survivor, so it used to be 4 times 100.
Wow.
And then we did, and then we just kept pushing Kogle. Surgical did a lot to, I think he was a part of it. I'm not exactly sure to what extent. I believe he had some doing in the config.
I think originally it was Surgical and Metafogl collaborated on Metafogl, and they I only really have interacted with the coders behind these. So there was Mr. Zero from the European scene, who spent a lot of time working on Confoggle, actually writing plugins and whatnot. And for the Civo config, there was Downtown, who I wouldn't be surprised if he was actually like hired by Civo or something. I don't really know the details, but he wrote most of the code that was used by the Civo config.
Yeah.
So I don't really know the names, like the public names attached to these configs. I only know the people who I saw writing code for them, unfortunately.
Yeah, it was really weird. Just how Left 4 Dead 2 worked. It was a lot of off and on because, like I said, Alienware and Newegg didn't exactly adopt the config everyone they wanted, so we were forced to still put up with the crappy scoring system that Left 4 Dead 2 ended up shipping with. I mean, both games didn't really have great scoring systems, so we definitely preferred a awful health bonus system as opposed to a flat amount like 25 per survivor. So it just I don't know. I didn't particularly enjoy the Alienware Arena tournament, even though it was very well run. I just didn't enjoy what we were playing on.
And when you say that tournament, you're talking about the Newegg Winter Windfest? Is that what you... The one you said you didn't enjoy?
I was specifically talking about the Alienware Arena,
Oh, okay.
because I'm fairly certain that it was running vanilla-esque or Civo config.
Yeah, and as for why they chose that config instead of Confogl, because Confogl had already been running, like, I think the story I heard was essentially that Confogl had been used for the Newegg tournament, and they had like huge numbers of like issues with the config that led to disputes and instability.
That actually that reminds me why it wasn't used for Alienware, because Confogl came out, I think, literally 2 weeks after Alienware started, and they didn't want to switch configs, so they stayed on the old one.
I mean, I think both of them sort of existed at the same time, but the Civo config had certainly been tested in a tournament before, in the Civo tournament. And so just from like a business perspective and like, you know, not an admin perspective, it seems like it would be a lot less risky to deal with the Civo config. But of course the players strongly preferred the gameplay in Confogl, and so there was a lot of strife because of that.
Right. So now I'm gonna throw a monkey wrench in here again, another little bit of a segue from our chronological order here. But Dragon, are you still alive over there?
I'm still hanging in.
So, okay, first of all, before I do this, exactly around what time is this right now in the American scene? Like, what year, what month?
I mean, this is like early 2011, I guess.
Okay,
2010?
so then,
early 2010.
Alright, so then early 2010, Dragon, what's going on in the EU scene at that time?
Well, around early 2010 was around about the same time that I entered the comp scene myself. I actually remember that when I started sort of looking up for teams that were looking for players themselves, I specifically requested I'd like to get into Comp Left 4 Dead 2 specifically to learn Confogl and to get used to it. So I'd only just become vaguely aware of its existence myself at that point. And at that same time, they were talking in the ESL forums about, you know, adopting Confogl and getting it into the mainstream play in the EU scene. A few teams, though, were reluctant. They still wanted to, for whatever reason at the time, wanted to spend a bit more time on vanilla before making the change, whereas most were quite keen on just getting straight into it. So that's when Confogl sort of started to take shape, like somewhere around like the first third or quarter of 2010. And then it sort of quickly grew sort of midway, you know, through the summer period of, you know, June, July.
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of similar sentiment in the US scene, and I almost wonder if it's like do you know which teams were the ones supporting vanilla versus supporting Confogl? Because it seems to me almost like the newer teams kind of wanted a chance to get good at vanilla Left 4 Dead 2 first before moving on to Confogl, and the teams who had been playing Frustions in Left 4 Dead 1 wanted to get back to that as soon as possible.
Yeah, well, bizarrely enough, the one of the very few teams that did want to carry on with vanilla was the only one that sort of answered my request for trying with a team when I was trying to actually get used to Confogl, because that's why I entered the comp scene. So that was kind of a bizarre thing to handle, but I eventually moved on from that point and got what I came for. So, but yeah, I mean, most of the teams were championing for Confogl to just sort of take place right away, which was really like the best and right sort of mentality to have at that time, I would say. because at that point, when Comp Left 4 Dead 2 began, we had teams like QN and Tanksmiths who were pretty formidable. They had a lot of strength and momentum coming from Left 4 Dead 1. In fact, I seem to remember QN sort of had a really strong tournament, I think. They had a very epic match versus Blade DBV, I think. I think there's like a YouTube video of it somewhere.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but it was basically those teams that sort of ruled the roost, and they carried on the momentum into Left 4 Dead 2, but they actually got bored enough of Comp Left 4 Dead 2 at that point that they kind of quit before Confogl really took place. So it was kind of a shame to sort of not see them carry on, because it would have been interesting to see if, had things been a little bit differently, maybe a few of the players, if not both of the teams, could have still been around. But I honestly don't know, because they quit at the same time I joined. So apart from play for QN, I never really got accustomed to how the others sort of think or play. I never even really got to spoke to the others, except for Shame. So
yeah, that's something I really wish I understood too. I mean, me being a fairly new player around the same time, in the US, seen plenty of teams, disappeared as well. Like Vortex, the team that won the first CVO tournament, quit immediately after, and a lot of teams like Blight, Area 51, a lot of them slowly fizzled out, and I wish I could really pinpoint the reason why that happened and figure out, what be done to convince teams like that to stay around.
Yeah, I mean, Blight had 3 teams. Wasn't it a Blight Rage, Blight DBV, and then there was a third one.
Yeah, I wouldn't remember the third one, but I know there were at least those 2, DPV and Rage.
I wish the Alienware brackets were still up. They took them down like a year ago.
I have that. I think I have a lot of that information saved somewhere. I have to go digging through like old files, but I might still have those brackets available.
I'm sure it exists at some point there. So okay, back onto our original path here, and I guess we're gonna try to focus it a little bit. We're gonna be back in then to, I guess we talked about mid 2010, and so then after that, where exactly did the config go?
So I mean, at some point, Canada Rocks was working on Confogl, and I decided to help out with him, and the two of us managed to be American enough to make Mr. Zero want to leave the project, I think, or something like that. No, and then eventually me and Canada Rocks essentially were running Confogl, and from there, I think I don't know if there's a lot to say about what we did, but I personally focused on trying to do like bug fixes and sort of fairness fixes, because I remember the first time I tried to do some sort of like a balance fix, I got so much like flack for it that I decided it wasn't worth working on those things. But I don't know if anybody else has any.
Yeah, I'm looking over the transition piece here, because if I'm going to show my new business here as far as configs go, but I know that different versions of Confogl happened where it transitioned from then into like Confogl Fresh and stuff like that, and I'm not an expert on this at all.
Sure. So basically, Confogl was the config for a long time, and there weren't these sub-configs under it. There was a little bit of difference between ESL's version of Confogl and our version of Confogl. And a bunch of smaller tournaments like Bowflexen's Confogl Cup for show. I think that was the main US config that was run on like the real T1 version of Confogl. And after that point, I don't think there was any other major tournament in the US. ESL in Europe was still doing plenty of events, and in Australia they of course had the Cyber Gamer ladder. And then eventually, one of the top European teams, Dragon probably knows more about this, is Router Pixies, decided to host the frag pipe.
Oh yeah, this is great. I love the frag. See, actually, and I've said this before, but the first competitive Left 4 Dead 2 I ever watched in my entire life was the frag pipe tournament, and that's actually where I first had my first, I guess, look at and sound of what Dragon sounded like casting. I'm so happy we have Dragon here. Dragon, talk about the frag pipe. I know you want to.
Yeah, I remember where all that started.
Yeah, well, the frag pipe was like many months in the making. They were talking about doing it since like winter 2010. I know, hearing from like Oya and Parvi, who were the original founders of Router Pixies, they founded it back in Left 4 Dead 1 times, and they were saying like there's going to be a really big tournament, and we we were all like really anxious to see it because they kept talking about it, but it's like, okay, a couple of months have passed now, we still haven't heard anything new. And then they said, okay, now it's really happening, and they're throwing like a $10,000 prize pool for it for the first three.
$10,000.
Yeah, that's like officially the biggest amount of prize money that's ever been slapped on a Left 4 Dead 2 tournament.
Yeah, that's definitely for sure.
But
yeah, and at some point they contacted me to do the config, but sorry, you should go ahead with what you're talking about.
yeah, I mean, they basically wanted to make it the biggest tournament. I mean, doing the prize money at that sort of amount was enough to make it the biggest, but they wanted to attract as many teams as possible. And in the end, it ended up attracting over 70 teams, I believe.
70 teams, and it was 70 international teams, as a matter of fact. And then, obviously, I'm trying to think back then, because that's where some of the players who are still around today, and some who aren't, obviously, that's like the roots of some of those teams. I know that was one of Kekery's first teams with the businessmen, and I know there was a lot of controversy around the Russian team High Skill, who also played in the tournament, and then obviously Router Pixies, who took first in that cup, if I'm right, Dragon.
Yeah, that's right. Router Pixies actually won the tournament. Businessmen finished runners-up, and High Skill, I believe, finished third. There are actually a few decent teams in that tournament that actually got really close to challenging all the three top teams, actually. It was never like an assured thing where the top three teams would finish in that specific order. And of course, if anyone had watched the frag pipe, but we can never forget that epic semi-final match between Pixies and Druids, where
Yes.
it required one hell of a comeback from Pixies to just steal it on map 4 of Parish.
So that config that was being played there was named just Confogl, or?
It was Confogl Fresh, I believe.
Fresh, okay.
Fresh, which is the name I came up with because when nobody gives me a name, I make terrible names for things.
I like
You
it.
You make
Fresh.
terrible names.
Kind of like our team name, but you know.
It definitely sounds a lot better than Pro Mod.
We'll get to that. Don't worry, Jacob. I know you're itching over there to talk about how you came up with that amazing
No.
name.
Were you around
don't
at the
worry.
time of the frag pipe?
I watched at the time, but I didn't really come around until towards the end of Fresh, and I was around, like, I scrimmed on Fresh, and then, like, probably about 3 months after I started playing is when Metafogl kind of took over. So, yeah.
And don't worry, Billy, we haven't forgotten about your reason as to why you left the community. So we're coming up on that. Don't worry about it.
Like I said, the train keeps moving on forward here. All right, so that's the frag pipe tournament.
So-
one of the. Are you sorry, Sim?
Can I talk about the config a little bit? Because
Yeah, definitely.
actually, I honestly wish that some of those Router Pixies people were still around because they came to me with like a laundry list of features that they wanted to be in their config, and they said they'd pay me for it, but I was just this little college student who didn't really know about doing commissioned work and stuff, and I maybe implemented like a third to a half of the things they actually wanted within the time frame they needed. And there's still a lot more good ideas that they had for the config that we didn't get to, and it would be kind of cool if we could get to some of those. But the main things that came out of that config were the pills healing over time, I think, is a big one. Do you remember anything else specifically, Dragon, that was introduced in Fresh that was of interest? I know there was other stuff, but
Wait,
I'm trying to remember if that
no
was like
spitters
the
during
time.
tanks, I think, came out then.
That was definitely one other big change. I think the other one was, did they try reducing the amount of M2s to 2 swings before fatigue? I think that was,
I think that was
something Fresh
Metafogl.
did.
Yeah, but people had been quote unquote reducing those M2s for a long time, and they just took them another notch down in Fresh.
I have a dumb question just to hold on to that, because I know you guys said that what was changed there, but when did you guys switch to HR only instead of other tier 2s?
That was in the original. That was in Confogl 2.x or whatever. That's that post Alienware config version is when we basically switched to tier 1s plus hunting rifles, and I think Frustians had a hunting rifle as well, right?
Yeah.
They did.
So that was basically the model that was set up by Frustian's config in Left 4 Dead 1 was shotguns, Uzis, and hunting rifles. And of course in Left 4 Dead 1 the hunting rifle was a lot worse. I mean, it had that much crazier spread while you're moving. So it wasn't, we didn't have limiting on it, but when we put it into Confogl we added limiting of hunting rifles because they were so good.
I saw HR back.
What?
I still want my HR back.
Oh yeah, it was a lot of fun to play with like a single sniper. It was a nice piece of, tactics in the game where you could have like, you have a shotgun whose job is to keep the commons off of the hunting rifle so he can pew pew at all of the SI. It was pretty fun.
And like that's what I miss. Like you don't see. I feel like the SI nowadays are lacking in coordination because back in those days you had like a semicircle of Uzis and shotguns, and you had to get to the HR or your attack was useless. And the SI always made huge hits, like full of damage happen on the survivors still. Yeah, nowadays it's like you don't see that.
Well,
So,
I actually think in the previous edition, and this is a real tangent, but in the previous edition of the Black and White podcast, we had Dawkins on for the last 30 minutes, and he said he felt the same way Kissme did. And the reason he said that and stuff like that is because pretty much due to the fact you don't have the HR, he has a feeling, this is going way out of chronological order, but fuck it, we'll do it live. He's saying that the reason for the lack of coordination and stuff is due to the fact that you don't either have the HR or in EQ's case, I guess, the scout. You have the situation where the special infected are more likely to go for high percentage plays, such as like a charge or a pull to a charge with a spit on top of it or some shit like that, instead of going for tri-caps. And he said that that's when you see a lot of the damage not happen because the SI don't need to be as coordinated due to the fact that survivors have lesser guns. I think that's what Dawkins said.
I think in general the configs over time have been moving towards changes that are more about the quote-unquote skill aspects of the game and less about the tactics and strategy a little bit. And so yeah, you get a little less varied gameplay in that sense, I would say. But I feel the same way as Dawkins in them. Maybe not as strongly about it, but yeah. I definitely see that trend.
All right, so moving back in the reeling back in, going back to then Metafogl Fresh then. So who was still working on development then as of this point in time?
It was mostly me and Canada Rocks at that point, and I don't know if we had anybody else particularly helping us. We worked with, I don't remember if Mr. Zero was around at all still. Atomic Striker we pulled some things from, but I think it was mostly just me and Canada Rocks running that config at that point.
Alright, so then...
Tasi, if I don't remember how to pronounce that, but if you remember him dragging...
Yeah. I
the teacup in German, I believe.
Yeah.
And he worked a lot on the configs, and of course, yeah, that was a lot of fun. The only other thing I think Fresh particularly added was the spit blocks on like the elevator in Hard Rain. I'm at a loss for thinking of anything else major that came out of it, though. Oh, there was Uzi limiting.
Oh, okay.
Uzi limiting came about then, I think. So you could only have up to 3 Uzis at that point.
Alright, so then, we get to this point, so then you guys, and where did the config go from there then after Fresh? Like, where did that go, I guess? I know that then, for my chronological order, I know that Metafogl also was on the horizon, I think, maybe? Don't kill me?
Yeah, I think after Fresh, there wasn't as much of a big efforts on making new 4v4 configs for a long time, but after Fresh, there was... that's when the 1v1 config came out, and people, I think, started working on things like 4v4 hunters and 2v2 configs and whatnot. And then after that, I mean, there were at least like 2 or 3 US tournaments run on just Fresh before Blade came in with Metafogl, and yeah, that's Blade's part now.
Alright then, so we're going to transition right in. Blade, and I know that Jacob did explain a little bit of this previously on different cats, so that's where he would probably try to get involved, but then you came along with Metafogl.
Okay, so buckle in, boys.
Oh, God.
Alright, so
Well.
Fresh had been out for a long time. I think Fresh had just been 0.2 for ages. Like, I didn't expect you to have any obligation to continue working on actively or had any reason to. But it's like it's a different world when you look at the forums because they think everything should be changed all the time.
Except for the ones who think nothing should be changed all the time.
Yeah. It's either vanilla or we should
They post
be
in different
punching
thread.
commons with our fists.
Oh, God.
That's pretty much the parallels we're at. But basically, Fresh had been, I guess, for lack of a better word, stagnant for a while. Just kind of like either, Fresh had just, and Prodigy was probably, and both Prodigy and Canada were probably busy with life at the moment. And I was, oh God, I was a sophomore, junior in high school. Like, I don't know. I had literally no time, I literally had nothing but free time. So I was like, I would come home and I'd be playing Left 4 Dead 2 and I'd be like, now wait a second. And then I drew a parallel between Fresh 0.2 and Rotoblin, which was the
Oh yeah.
Left 4 Dead 1 config that was picking up a lot of steam, and there was a lot of quality of life improvements, mainly things like you don't have to pick up your own pills, which isn't like a huge issue, but then things like lower melees, limiting of certain weapons, etc., etc. And I just looked at those, I was like, no, I wonder if I could do something like that, and that's what Metafogl was for. Now, you think that Fresh is a bad name, Metafogl's even worse. But we get to that point. I said, just like, screw it, we're naming it Metafogl. I don't even care. It was just what my group of friends agreed on. That sounds stupid enough to go for. So we work on that, and I just do a bunch of little config checks, seeing what I can steal from Rotoblin, and I release the first version, and it picks up a little slow, I think. But I think the adoption of the I started like version 5 for some reason. I still have past versions on my hard drive, but I was upping the version number by like a whole 1 every time I messed with something. Like, so I would edit like a text file for like 1 letter, and I'd name it from Metafogl version 1 to Metafogl version 2. And that'd just be something I would do. Like, again, high school. But anyways,
Hey.
during that time, I started learning a little bit about SourceSpawn, and I was just working about it very little. Like I said, it was still very basic and rudimentary, and it was mostly things that I could, let's see if I can take this code, put it together, and get it to work. And I did a bunch of extensive testing, and it was something. I guess that's the best way to put it. A lot of people that were around during that time will know that I released new versions 10 minutes after I released the previous version, stuff like that. A lot of people that were system admins probably hated me at that point, but we got to that thing, and the basic motivation for me making Metafogl was just to show people that, hey, you can do this. Like, hey, you're complaining about all these things on the forums, or you're not complaining about it. You can just go and open up Notepad and do this. Like, it's not difficult. It is something that is just a little time consuming, and it's just as I started adding new things, yeah, it was adopted originally because of how stagnant Fresh had gotten, and people were just like, hey, we're ready for more things. And then I started adding more things to it, and then we started having more issues. I was looking on the Steam forums for just new ways to add things to the game. Like, I didn't want to take any more weapons away. I didn't want to take anything else away from the game. We already had so much cut, and that wasn't an inherently bad thing, but it's just like I'm out of things to remove, basically. And so I was looking, and I saw some user called Tabernaut or whatever post on the Steam forums about all these things all these new props he added to the game. And they added more vantage points for the infected to get interesting songs. It's like, well, shit, why don't I just give that a run? And that was pretty much, that was probably the most polarizing of the configs. Either people literally wanted me killed, or they loved it because of how fresh everything the map seems with these extra.
I get it.
Yeah, these fresh.
I mean, map modifications are still pretty controversial today, I'd say, but I think for the most part, they've been iterated on, and that's what really needed to happen, right? Is you just keep working on them, and now the map modifications that we have on like Dark Carnival 1 and stuff, I don't think anybody's complaining about them. I think people like them a lot, and all it took was people to keep putting in the effort to try to make them better.
Yeah. No, it was. I really did enjoy making Metafogl for what it's worth. I did. In the beginning, it was just something I really loved to do. I loved playing Left 4 Dead 2, and I wanted to see the competitive community progress forward because I really enjoyed. I remember the first time I played Fresh, it was like Dead Air 1, and I just remember having such a hard time getting to the safe room. I was walking in there, 5 health, bleeding. And I just remember how tense it was, and I always wanted to play Left 4 Dead like that. I wanted to play it tense and exciting. And that's just what I did when I made Metafogl. I wanted to keep it exciting and make it so, hey, you can do this. You can. It's not hard. And that was basically what I went with moving forward. And it just sort of overall the community backlash kind of got to me, I guess.
What were some of the like main changes in like your early versions? If you can refresh our memories.
So early versions was limiting of Uzis. That was a big change that I did. Okay. You had definitely, if I remember correctly, you had definitely added an external plugin, or you were working on something to work with melees. We had a CVAR for it, but it wasn't perfect. And but you had been working on a plugin, if I remember correctly, that had limited melees. Maybe I'm wrong, but I remember it wasn't. It was there, but nobody was using it. And
when you say melees, you mean like melee weapons?
I mean, like
or bashes.
M2s, bashes.
Okay.
Yeah, it was I don't even know how much were able to limit it with the C bar, maybe 3 or 4 swings. I'm not sure off the top of my head. It was so long ago, but we had a plugin that could get it down to 2. And I was really interested in trying that because I saw it being done on Rotoplin, and teams could deal with that very easily. And I had just pushed it forward along with the Uzi limiting. So that was the initial changes. We got very minor in terms of things like map modification and health weight, like how much health there was in a map. But things like guns and melees were changed.
Just a little interjection. I actually recently downloaded one of the really old versions of Meta. I think I remember asking you if you remembered which version you first had the props a while ago. Might have been a few months ago now, but I downloaded like the one where you first added the props, and I was looking through all of them for ideas, because I wasn't necessarily like, looking for new props to add for Pro Mod, but it was just more of, seeing if there were any ideas that you had that, because I remember a lot of them got like knee-jerk removed, So I wanted to look through and see if there were any things that, we could add back into Pro Mod, and I remember seeing a few things that were really interesting, and I think that it's unfortunate that at the time, people were so against it, it was just kind of like, at the time, the whole idea of props was not accepted really by the community. So it's unfortunate. I think that some of those changes had come around like later, like around now. I think people would have been more open to them. I think that's about a lot of things too that were being changed back then. I think people are a lot more open-minded now. So it was a little bit of a tangent. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely true. There's a lot of features that have come into these configs that have gotten a lot of initial backlash, and some of them might have been not the greatest features at the time. Some of them could have been good features at the time, but I mean, really, it would have been a lot of these features just needed like to be tested and improved upon, and then they could be the great features that they could be. And map modifications were one of those. It's just a little unfortunate that it didn't make it through the initial backlash for those.
So then community-wise, we had obviously Blade mentioned that Fresh had been a little bit stagnant at that point, and then he started development and obviously continuous development on Metafogl. Then what exactly did one of those then stay the community standard, or what exactly happened to that for tournament play?
So yeah, what tournaments? I mean, the only tournaments I remember on Metafogl were fuck it, we'd do it live. But Blade, you probably know more than that.
I'm like I said, it was pretty much it was the pug standard for sure. It was just something everyone did. I remember Zen Digital pushed it really hard, and I think he just he really liked it. He really liked the changes I pushed through.
Sure.
And beyond that, I couldn't give you names off the top of my head, but I remember, like I said, it was just something people got used to after a while. It was just the latest Metafogl. That's what it is, because they were just like they weren't particularly a fan of all the changes, but they wanted the changes that Fresh didn't have.
Right. So, was it used in an EFPS, though?
I believe so. I think it was used in one.
Is this still 2011, or are we moving even further now?
This is 2011 still.
Okay.
Shit. It was, yeah. I remember when it first started being used in like tournaments was in the 7-point-something era of meta.
Right.
I think it might have been like early 7.1 or something.
We need to bring back those fuck it, we'll do it live tournaments, though.
Yeah, we do.
Those were so much fun. Like everybody who was playing in those, I think, had a really good time.
Yeah.
All right, so then moving there, so we have a couple tournaments that were obviously used on Metafogl, and then after that point in time, where did the next transition happen? Because we talked about how then Fresh, and then obviously the development of Metafogl. So then what happened exactly?
We moved over to Pro Mod from that point because I had been working on it solo for a majority of the time. I'd say maybe 70% of its life cycle I'd worked on it solo, and then I started taking input from other people, and I think Jacob was the one that just kind of showed the most interest in helping me. And it was sort of like, originally my guinea pigs for testing configs was just my friends. So I was just like, anybody that actually cared about the game that wanted to test it, I was down for, and getting feedback from anyone, because I didn't feel like I got as much feedback as I wanted. So I took on Jacob, and I asked him just kind of for suggestions, ran everything by him. He was basically my editor in the beginning, and then he sort of took on more of a contributor role. He started doing more things with the configs. He started adding more ideas, and then eventually I just let him take over completely with things that happened that were not great.
What were these things that happened that forced you to step away? Well, no, you willingly stepped away.
I was on his team at the time. Can I?
I'll talk about it because.
All right, Blade. I mean, and honestly, and the other thing we do here, obviously, on Black and White Podcast, we have a lot of audience questions, and I don't even need to read them because I think you already read the chat, Blade. So the floor is yours.
Okay, so here we go again.
Fucking
All right,
hacker.
I've talked about this like 15 times. It's still, I mean, it's still a point of contingency. No matter what I say, people are either going to believe me or they're not going to believe me. It was a lot of hate. There is a lot of difference between getting a one or two messages saying "good job for your work on Metafogl," and that those even were non-existent on some versions, between all the amount of hate I got on places like Left 4 Dead Nation. I may have been
Left 4
called
Dead
Left 4
Nation is
Dead.
an amazing place.
It may have been called Left 4 Dead Now at the time. I don't remember.
It would have been L4D Nation run by Rorek
Yeah.
Okay.
at the time. I was not involved with the site at that point, I don't think. Or maybe I was, I don't remember.
Yeah, so at that point, they pretty much there was always some sort of backlash to whatever I did, but it's just sort of, it was one of those things I kind of took in stride until we got to tap on map changes, and then it sort of became more intense. It just sort of was just all the time, like, why are you doing this? And I just kind of got into the arguments very, I don't know, I don't think I should have, but I cared so much about my config, and I cared so much of making sure the game was as good as I can make it, and I just really got into these, and it really kind of hurt sometimes how much that I was kind of laid on. And then I realized, I was talking with one of my friends, it's just like, I'm not sure I can do this anymore. And that's probably a gracious way of saying it. I was probably said something along the lines like, I want fucking out. That's probably a better way of saying it. And I was just basically like, there's no way, in my mind, I went, and there's no way I can say I'm going to leave and people will let that be. There's no way that's going to work. So in my mind, rationally, I downloaded mat hacks that just removed the foliage in the game and changed all the SI to bright red, and I just played. And of course it got caught pretty easily, because when you're sniping things from 20 miles away, it's pretty easy to tell that you're not being legitimate, especially when you can level chargers through non-existent trees. It's not something that's very easy to hide. So I got confronted about it. I think I was at a friend's house at the time when I got confronted about it. I was on his laptop and I was just playing League of Legends, if I remember correctly. And I was just like, AF1 and Bowflex and brought me in, and they were like, they were just saying they knew what happened. They wanted me to confess and whatnot, and I did. And then I just sort of had a breakdown, and I just sort of had, I guess I can only measure it up to anxiety attacks. I don't know. I was sort of panicking while trying to remain my cool, and it didn't really do well. So I just immediately, I deleted what control I had over the site, I think, and then I deleted everyone off Steam, and I just sort of went into a sort of social recluse. And then beyond that, it was sort of just, I kind of like was blocked from the community at that point. Like I said, I had obviously had conversations with people that were still close friends of me, that people like Jay, Zen Digital, and Kissme and whatnot. But beyond that, I wasn't really a part of the community after that anymore.
The fuck was that, Kissme? That was nice. So okay then. So you're saying the main reason then for that stuff happening is due to the fact that you got a lot of pressure from, I guess, the community. And I think pretty much everybody knows that generally the community can be a very vicious beast at times, especially with the people who are in, I guess, not just positions of power, but positions of development of the config. So that was a main reason for which that stuff happened. It was, so you basically saw the downloading the mat hacks as a way to get out.
Yeah, I found a way that if nobody's gonna bother a hacker to play the game again, there's no way. It sort of changed as we got into these VPK disabling things. I thought that was a little funny, but beyond that, it was just nobody bothers me to play the game anymore. And so I guess in a way it did get what I wanted, but it still wasn't a rational way of dealing with things. It was just sort of something that made sense to me in my head at the time, and I just sort of I reacted to everything very what's the word? Snappy, I guess. I just kind of made snap
knee-jerk reactions.
Yeah, I saw them making fun of me on the forums about being a hacker, and I deleted the site, and then I just like, oh shit, I shouldn't have done that. I sent the database to Prodigy some like a year later or something like that. Maybe not a year later, but like 6 months later or something like that. Like, it was just a lot of snap decisions and a lot of bad decisions that sort of ruined my goodwill with the community. Oh, goodwill, but you know what I mean.
Your good standing, yeah.
Yeah.
I want to try to kind of paint a picture of what that whole thing looks like to me.
Okay.
Is, I mean, if you're making a config like this and making changes like that, you're putting in a lot of your time and effort into trying to make the game better. And a lot of people don't seem to appreciate that in and of itself. The fact that you're putting an effort and trying to make things better for them. And anytime that, if you're putting in all this work and you're feeling like, the community's not appreciating the things you do, it's just going to build up, and you feel like, if I'm going to get all this negative feedback and negative attention for doing this, why the fuck am I doing that? But if you quit at the same time, it's just going to look like you gave up, and all of these people are going to seem like, their viewpoints have been validated by the fact that he quit, and they'll be like, see, good, finally we got rid of this guy who was making terrible changes to the game. And it seems like a lose-lose. You keep working on it, and you keep taking shit for everything you do, or you stop working on it and your reputation ends there as the guy who made a shitty config that everybody hates or something, and it doesn't seem like there's a way out. And honestly, I feel like I personally never made very signages in any of the versions of Konfogel I did. I always did sort of things that I felt like everybody things that would be safe, things that I could say there's no possible way anyone could disagree with this. And it's because the first time that I made a change that was controversial in any sense, the negative feedback just made me feel like there's no possible way to please these people. And my defense mechanism was to stop making changes that people could possibly see as controversial in any sense, and Blades just didn't really have a viable defense mechanism available to him. As it seems, and the result is what we saw. Is we see, people getting frustrated, and
obviously that's what happens there. And then so then Blade, after that happened, then how long did you stay away from the community for, technically, then, after you obviously all that stuff went down?
Like I said, I've always had contact with some members of the community, but beyond that, I don't think I've really been a member of playing the game. Like I said, I think during that 2-year period from which I was, it's more than 2 years between the period of when I was banned and from when they did the VPK disabling thing. I believe I played maybe 2 or 3 games. I believe the first thing I was brought back for was some ridiculous 12v12 or something that Paragysm was a part of. And I fairly enjoyed that, but it was fairly, lighthearted in nature. But it's just kind of it was one of those things where I was fully prepared to give up the game, and I did. It's whatever if you don't believe my story or not, but it's just one of those things they got what I wanted, or they got what you guys wanted. You guys didn't want me part of the game, and I'm not addressing to you guys specifically, but the community. You guys didn't. The community didn't want me to be making these changes anymore, and I just didn't want to be interacting with the community anymore, so I just disconnected myself from the game entirely.
Alright, well, you did take Manachar away. But, losing Blade was a big blow to the community, because it wasn't just that he was the head dev of Metafogl, he was also the leader of, at the time, Community for Fame, which came before L2L. And, losing you, I'm not even too sure who took your place. Was it Colors, or...?
It may have been. I know.
Wouldn't have been Zen Digital at the time, maybe? I don't know.
Possibly. Zen Digital did a lot, in terms of just both helping me with the configs and kind of pushing them a lot, so I wouldn't be surprised if he was the one that was pushing Community for Fame after I dropped the ball.
Right.
And beyond that, then Jacob sort of swung over and picked up Metafogl, and he released under a different
That's where we're going next.
Probably a very good change not to call it Metafogl.
Alright, so then now we can get to him, Jacob. I know you've been sitting here. I know you've been itching to talk about this. And as we saw there, the transition now from Blade, we had everything that happened with him. And then suddenly you come in here and you pick up this Metafogl and you come up with the config that I first put on when I was playing competitive. We're actually getting to something I know a little bit about now, and that is Promod. Jacob, tell us the story.
Alright.
I might have to interrupt Jacob. When did EQ come out?
EQ came out...
Is that
that's
fresh?
his... Yeah, that's... Yeah. That
Dragon?
He would know more about
EQ
that.
came out at about around near the end of 2011, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so that's
Yeah.
EQ.
I think it came out around the same time as Promod.
Yes,
Because I remember that Boat used to message me and call me bad words that I won't repeat and say that I stole everything from EQ.
Oh,
Well, I remember the first EQ Cup definitely went live February 2012, so the config itself had to have been going on for at least about 2 or 3 months before that. I think it was around about November 2011, if my memory recalls correctly.
What? 2011 for EQ?
Yeah.
Really, that early? I
Yeah,
guess
I
that's
believe
possible.
so. It would have been
It was
late
a few months
2011.
after the end of Fragpipe, but yeah, it was around the end of 2011 because that's when I first met Jazzy. He actually entered through the CGFB group and played in the first CGFB Cup. And when he was talking with myself and Vincent, who were the two admins then, we had been experimenting with a config, a few you might remember back then, called Deathwish, and it was purely an experimental config, just designed to sort of like test out a few various things that we were very curious to see with the results. Well, anyway, long story short, Deathwish kind of went on, but then we hit a roadblock, and it came to a point where myself and Vincent were kind of at loggerheads and wanted to go in opposite ways. I felt like there had to be a cutback, and Vincent wanted to keep on going with the same routine that Deathwish was heading in at that time. Because of some issues, it meant that the Deathwish team split apart, and Jazzy, as well as Battle, went along with me to sort of went on and form EQ, which was quite a notch down from Deathwish in terms of craziness. But yeah, that's pretty much how EQ started. And it was really to sort of increase the challenge somewhat, but also to sort of maintain a few things as well. Like, for example, now, even today in EQ, you still see the Scout, for example, which was the replacement for the hunting rifle. Because the one gripe that we had in particular about the hunting rifle wasn't because of like its damage per bullet, but it was because of the fire rates. It felt incredibly spammy for a so-called rifle with infinite range. So that was one thing where actually that was Battle's idea. He actually came up with the idea of maybe trying out the CS Scout, and lo and behold, it actually worked out pretty well. We had to sort of alter the damage values a bit because I remember on one game where I had the tank on Parish Map 3, and it was in the central area. It's a massive rooftop that's after the drop with the lands on the trailer and then down onto the sort of, ground floor. And the Scout only did 90 damage per bullet, which is what it does in vanilla terms. But I practically just stayed there without having to take cover. I just ate all the bullets, and I still had about 2k health remaining when the whole Survivor team was wiped, and I just up on the roof doing a rock tank the entire way, just eating chip, not bothering to hide. So we knew we had to increase the damage of a Scout at that point. So we were just sort of experimenting a little bit. But yeah, I mean, we got a lot of that from Deathwish, really. So EQ, when we sort of like got ourselves together for that, it sort of came by very quickly at that point.
That's still back in, so that's pretty much happening at the same amount, or the same time that ProMod then would start to be developed, or EQ was just a little bit earlier?
If I recall correctly, I think EQ was a little bit earlier, by maybe 2 or 3 months, but I don't remember the exact length of time.
I think that's accurate. That EQ predated ProMod by a few months.
A couple months. I think it came out when I started working on Metafogl.
Now let's just go ahead and ask the burning question in everyone's minds right now.
Yeah.
Which config is better?
Well, I mean, I think it's pretty obvious.
Okay, no. That's
What a
not the burning question. The question was, the very serious question I have is, when I talk to some people who are fans of EQ, they say that EQ is balanced in a certain way to where that makes the game the most fair. And then I go and I actually talk to people who are friends of ProMod, and then they say that that's balanced in the way to make the game the most fair. Which one's actually more balanced and why? That's the real flame question.
I mean, it comes down to, do you like clearing your teammates from a mile away, in my opinion.
That's like saying I'm lactose intolerant. Here's 1%.
I think that EQ does a really good job. I think EQ does a really good job of balancing out a sniper rifle, and I think that it's a fine config for people who like sniper, and I respect the people who make it, and I think it's great. But in my opinion, sniper makes survivor play a lot easier, and you can be a lot sloppier. And I think that Grizz and Hib and the like would do a lot better on EQ.
Shit, Dragon.
I'm dropping bombs.
I'm gonna ask Dragon what's his counter to that.
Well,
It's just
that's
spicing
the
I'll
things
reason,
load
up.
on these
that's the
fuckers,
reason
come on.
why we brought in the scout, because, like I said, the same reason that we moved the hunting rifle was because it was too spammy. So we felt like the sniper needed to be toned down quite a notch. So the first version of EQ sort of just had the scout in, and that was pretty much it. But then, come around about 2.0, we decided to nerf it down a little bit more to the point where it had less recoil. So similar to actually to the L4D2 hunting rifle, and also less damage per bullet on the tank. So it's basically 125 damage per bullet. That might seem more per bullet than the hunting rifle, but don't forget that the hunting rifle fires about 3 or 4 bullets per second,
Right.
whereas the scout fires just 1. So really what you have there is a gun that, yes, it's got the long range capability, but if you're not precise enough with your headshots, and if you don't know how to position yourself with a sniper, you're going to get fucked if you don't know how to hand yourself at close range when the SI start coming in.
So then, in general, then, like, how would you characterize the difference between like EQ and Pro Mod as you see it, and what makes EQ better?
Yeah.
I mean,
Maybe that's a little loaded,
I mean-
but
Not
I
at
mean,
all.
myself being a founder, I'm not going to lie. I'm going to admit that, I am biased when it comes to the configs. I'm not going to bullshit about that. But at the same time, I will admit that, there are 2 differences between the configs, and, it's just a case of what's more, what is the cup of tea for the person in question that you're asking. So, I mean, the difference that I would characterize is we still kept the sniper because even though it has a long range advantage, there's still that element where we wanted to keep it because we still remember from ages ago watching this great like rock tanks where they played amazing rock tanks, some of the players in the past, but they had to do it even with a hunting rifle staring them right in the face. And that took balls to do it, and some people struggle with it, but the really top players actually managed to do it really well. I remember like Rooter Pixies doing it. I remember Four Kings being able to do it. Even the past teams as well. Even though they had the military rifles still around when T2s were still around, I think QN and Tanksmiths were still being able to do tons of damage with just rock tanks, even when snipers were against them. And I just think that with the absence of a sniper, it makes rock tanking significantly easier. That's just in my opinion, though.
That's why in Pro Mod, I think that rock tanking shouldn't be that easy. I think that most people know how to LOS now and skeet rocks, and that's why when we removed Sniper from Pro Mod, we were like, this is going to be a betterment for Survivor play in general. It's going to make people a lot less sloppy, because with Sniper, I feel like people just stand in the open and they don't really care about LOSing. It's just, alright, stand in the open, shoot people, shoot rocks, and then when the attack comes in, shut it down and repeat. Whereas with LOSing, it's a lot more cycling and focused on shutting down spawns more efficiently. And that's why I think Sniper makes rock tanking almost too easy for survivors to handle. But
it certainly
biased in
changes the
matter.
dynamic, I think.
Yeah, I mean, well, I remember back to like the days of Konfogel and Fresh, where most teams that I was playing against in the EU scene, at least, were pretty much doing the same thing in Pro Mod, where they were actually LOSing, but they just have a sniper out in the open, just trying to score the chip off a tank, and that was pretty much it. So I think when you're actually measuring on a level of capability and potential of what the Survivor team can do, it's not a great deal changes. It's just that one guy's out in the open with a long-range gun in his hands.
Well, what's the point then of the other 3 LOSing if he has sight on the guy in the sniper or whatever?
Well,
Wouldn't it be
because
more
he could
efficient for them to
LOSing,
be blocking spawns?
Could be blocking spawns as well. Yeah,
Oh,
it could be
God.
both the same thing.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
That's Kissme?
In the EU scene, though, I'm kind of wondering, because I think in the US, for the most part, people prefer Pro Mod, maybe just because it's a US config. But is there any like dissenting opinions in the EU scene, or I mean, what are
Well,
opinions in general on the 2 configs?
It's kind of mixed, to be honest, because a few people I think prefer it because maybe there's 1 or 2 aspects where they think it's a little too much in EQ, and others prefer it because they think, well, it actually rewards play more in certain aspects. So it's kind of half and half. I mean, I see mixed opinions on both sides of the Atlantic, to be honest, with the people I speak to. So yeah, it's kind of, the way I see it, it's kind of 50-50.
So over in the European scene, obviously, it's going to be 50-50 between Promod and, obviously, Promod and Equilibrium in that sense. And when you've gone and done international tournaments with EQ, obviously, you've gotten a lot of good response there in a bunch of teams. And I've seen players, obviously, that are fans of both in that sense. But I think, and this is where I know this is going to shit, but I'm just going to say it. I mean, tank slowdown with Uzis. Okay, this game mechanic in the sense, I've seen it, and I'm going to use this as a litmus test out of left field here, if that makes any sense. But when I took a look at the way Envy plays in the Equilibrium Cup number 3, how they played, I should say, and how they're playing in the RBT that's hosted obviously by Jacob and myself, it seems as though that if you have the right kind of coordination, not just Envy but other teams in this sense, that they can exploit the Uzi slowdown to the point where it's almost like a game-breaking mechanic. Like, you can slow down the tank enough to where he won't even get close. Now, I don't know if that's game-breaking, but it certainly changes the dynamic. So,
which
config
config has tank slowdown? I
Promod.
don't remember.
Promod has tank slowdown, and EQ has no tank slowdown for Uzis, correct,
I'm of
Dragon?
the opinion that having no tank slowdown is a crutch for sloppy infected play. But
I feel like you oversimplify these things a lot,
I
Jacob.
am, but I'm just trying to keep it spicy in here, keep it nice and hot. I don't know. I think that, like, I see both sides of the argument, obviously, and I think that, like you said, in the right hands, it can be really rough playing tank against forest survivors who know how to properly cycle, slow down on tank and whatnot. But I think that, in general, I mean, we've seen plenty of teams, with tank slowdown have amazing tanks or whatever, whereas I feel like when I see tanks without tank slowdown, whenever I see a tank not get a corner in an in-cap when there's no tank slowdown, I think, wow, that tank really is just, not doing great there. Because I feel like there's no reason not to get a corner with no tank slowdown. But, I mean, I guess I am, like I said, I'm biased in the matter, and I'm actually curious what Dragon's, opinion is on tank slowdown and why, obviously I know that you think that tank slowdown is stupid, but I'm curious, what you think about the whole idea of what I said, basically, where it's like a free corner, in my opinion. What do you think about that?
Well, it depends a lot on where the map is in question and what part of the map that tank fight is happening. If it's in an open area, then the corner might not be so easy.
Yeah, I
in
agree
more
with that.
enclosed quarters, definitely, yes. It is a problem as well, in a sense, because when me and Jazzy in battle were sort of thinking about this change, we were lamenting the fact that, yeah, unfortunately, it does make things a little bit easier for a close quarters tank. I mean, that wasn't exactly our intention. We weren't exactly saying, let's make something easier for the SI here. It was more or less just basically removing some sort of a mechanic that has more to do with just, being exploitative rather than something that's just, well, you can see what I'm saying. But anyway, the point is that when you actually compare the running speed of both the tank and the survivors, I mean, the survivors are marginally faster. So,
right.
I mean, in a straight line, they have more, slightly faster running speed. We all know that.
Mm-hmm.
Another point is, well, when you don't have slowdown there, it basically means that it requires the survivors to have a superior sense of positional awareness and movement. They got to know where they're going. They've got to make sure that they're not going to backtrack and get caught on the edge of an object or a wall or a corner or get caught by a stray common. So, they're really being tested on their movement, and I think that's somewhat valid because at the end of the day, the survivors are the ones who are earning the points. They've got to earn that bonus, and they've got to do it under more challenging circumstances. And plus, with the slowdown out of the way, it doesn't matter so much if you're carrying an SMG or a shotgun. You don't have to concern yourself with the thought of, oh, well, we got slowdown, so let's get 3 SMGs. You've got more liberty with your guns and your choices, which also opens up strategy in the same sense that you can employ Left 4 Dead 1 roaming tank style sort of play as well, which we have seen in EQ a few times and has actually worked really well. If anyone's watched Left 4 Dead 1 extensively, you probably remember the classic sort of roaming tank strategy where they have 4 shotguns in a close quarters in a small room, and they just go to town on a tank. And that's despite the fact that unlimited dead stops are disabled. A boom could land, things could get really messy, could easily be a wipe, but sometimes it could also rail the tank pretty hard.
Well,
So I think to be able to do that is, I think that's something that maybe the Left 4 Dead 2 community could try sort of matching up to.
The thing is that in Left 4 Dead 1, and this is something that Left 4 Dead 1 players have brought up to me in the past, is that part of why that 4 shotgun strat works so well is because if you get cornered by a tank in Left 4 Dead 1, if you're getting punched, you can get a shotgun shot off between each punch. At least that's what I've been told by Left 4 Dead 1 players. And I guess that makes a big difference in why that strategy works so well. Is that you can like take that corner and still kill tank relatively
damage
fast
as you have that corner.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Whereas in Left 4 Dead 2, if you get cornered, you don't have a gun.
But they do have a
Unless
melee
you have a
weapon.
melee.
They do have a melee.
Yeah, if you have
weapon,
melee.
which does
True.
more damage per blast than a shotgun.
I hate how inconsistent it is, though. I played a game yesterday, and it's like, if I was like reloading my shotgun while I got punched into a corner, and I had a melee weapon, but I couldn't, for whatever reason, during the timings between the punches, I was unable to switch to it and actually hit the tank with it at all. So I don't know. It's a little wonky, and it's not as cut and dry. And of course, you don't always have a weapon either. Whereas in Left 4 Dead 1, you're pretty much always going to have a shotgun that you can shoot with.
I've also had times where with a melee weapon, like you're not able to get it out in time when you're getting punched. Like there'll be times where sometimes I feel like I can get like 2 swings off before tank can get another punch on me, but other times I think it might just be the melee weapon, like how long it takes to pull out. Maybe different ones have different pull out time, I don't know. But I know I've been caught where like I can't even get my melee swing before I get hit again. So I don't know.
Right. So then I'm thinking back, and I know another thing that has been said about pro mod, and I guess it's some of the criticisms here, Jacob. I'm gonna put you up here. I'm gonna crucify you,
Sweet,
and then we're
put me
gonna
on
take you back
blast.
down. So one of the things that some people said that it's, I guess, too hard for survivors, quote unquote, and that took too much out of the game from the main I mean, it's like too many elements were taken out of the game in that sense. Like, I know
agree.
obviously that you're trying to put more of them back in with the recent changes that you've made to propane and gas cans and stuff like that as well, right?
Mm-hmm. I agree. I think that, and this is not, it's unfortunate that, well, not unfortunate, but I'm not trying to like take shots at any like old developers or anything.
Oh,
and
God.
I respect everybody that has worked on it, but I think
half
that
of them are here, so you know. You
yeah,
could just...
I know. That's what I'm saying. Is I think that a lot of things got hastily removed without the effort to balance them first, and I don't think that was necessarily the wrong move because it's easier to remove things and then try to look back at them later. But I think that once things get removed, it's a lot harder to try to add them back and balance them and have the community accept it. So I think that I guess just I wish that I was around earlier, or that the people who were working on the configs back then had maybe like put more effort into trying to balance things instead of removing them. And I mean, I'm at fault for doing this too, like I accept I definitely have done this as well, where I just remove something and later I'm like, well, I probably could have actually balanced that. And I think that in general, it might have been a better way to move forward with the game is to have a more open mind about things instead of just black and white, like propane should or shouldn't be in the game, or gas cans should or shouldn't be in the game, Well, I guess I should say should or shouldn't be vanilla or out of the game. I don't know what I'm trying to say. I think you understand what I'm trying to say. But
Sure. I think most of the reason though that removing has happened is not just I think most of the major config makers over the past have realized that removing stuff overall is not the greatest thing to do for the game. We should be focusing on trying to find things to add that improve the game, as opposed to trying to get rid of things in general. But most of the time, it's part of it's the community feedback, right?
Yeah, definitely.
You don't get as much shit for removing a Molotov, or removing a throwable, or removing gas cans, as you get for adding props or something like that.
Yeah,
as I think Blade can testify to.
I can agree with that. I think like it's kind of like, for example, when Adrenaline was still in the game, we tried to balance them, and people were like, whatever, like no one really cared, because it's not like we were adding Adrenaline back, we were just like tweaking them. But then the second that they got removed, like it was like no one complained or anything, it was just like, okay, they're gone, bye. And like no one questioned it. But then you adding something, not even that big of a thing, but if it's different and it's new, then people immediately are like, whoa, what's this,
I mean, I think in general, in the mindset of a competitive player, what it boils down to is, if you remove something that I liked, that's kind of sad. But if you add something that I'm not used to, that's more work that you're having to make me do to be as good of a player. And it's just kind of annoying. If you don't feel like it's completely necessary that it be added, then it feels like you're more justified in saying that it shouldn't be added, even though that's not healthy for the game overall.
Alright, so we have an audience question here. We're going to have a truce for a second, and I'm going to ask this to Dragon first, then to Jacob. So this is for each of the configs specifically. Dragon, what, in your opinion, was the best feature that you added and or your favorite feature of EQ?
Blimey. Well, there's quite a few, obviously.
You could probably include Death Wish too.
Well, to be honest, I think the best feature that was ever introduced, which is actually one that doesn't get mentioned often, was the tank lottery plugin, the one that Jazzy developed, because I think that changed the complexion of SI tank play and teamwork a hell of a lot. It basically meant that no team could basically try and get their best quote tank player to sort of hoard all the tanks due to like the random sort of system that was going on back then. But yeah, basically the system where one person gets a tank each time, each round, the lottery eliminates the one player that's already got a tank and then gets another one. I think that's the change I really love the most, because it's one that could actually be applied to sort of any config regardless and still be a great addition. So yeah, I think for me it was the tank lottery thing.
And there's not a lot of complaints about that come back either. Like the only complaint about that system that I ever hear is just that some people sort of wish that they could not have this tank or something. They wish they could delegate, but as you said, you don't want somebody to monopolize all the tanks for their team because they have a much better tank player or something.
And then Jacob, same question to you that I asked the Dragon. What's your favorite feature that you've implemented in ProMod?
Oh, that's really, that's so hard to answer, because, I've been working on ProMod and Meta or whatever for almost 3 years now, and I mean, there's been so many things that I've added that I've been, really happy with at the time. It's really hard to pick one. I would say, I'm just going to answer with, my most favorite recent change. I think that the water slowdown being reduced during tank has been amazing so far. Every game I've played, it felt like it didn't feel like I wanted to fight tank and water, but it felt like when I fought tank and water, I wasn't just screwed.
That's definitely a nice change.
Yeah, I'd say so. All right, now we went from that nice kind of softball here to the question that, of course, Kissme is instigating. That's going to, I'm sure, spark a bunch of shit, because that's what Kissme does with his life. Which config do you feel breeds the better players and requires more skill?
And go.
Is there any need for that question?
Go, Dragon, go.
Can we just veto
Do any of us actually care about that? Is that what you're thinking about?
It was a legitimate. It was a legitimate.
You know what? Honestly, every single time that I make an update to ProMod, I'm like, what can I do to make people hate EQ in this update? And I'm just like, I've actually been looking into doing slandering and hate speech within my config.
Oh my god!
So when you ready up, it just says in tiny text, "Equilibrium is devil" and stuff like that. Also, I've been looking
every time a tank whips a punch on you, say, this tank would have hit you.
Yeah, this tank would have hit you. In EQ, this tank would have incapped you. There you go. It's all about slandering these days.
You just show up for the tanks on the other side, though, and be like, hey, in EQ, you would have had that punch.
No. It says, it says, when you're tank, it says, darn, I bet you wish this tank was in water. Well. Is that? I actually have to ask about that, by the way. What was the idea behind making tanks run faster in water than survivors? That was a total tangent. Yeah, that's what I've heard, is that they run faster than survivors in water, correct?
No, they don't.
What? Really?
Well, no, they don't run fast. He's not saying that tanks run faster in water. He's saying that with water slowdown applied...
No, I heard that survivors don't have water slowdown anymore, but tanks have increased move speed in water.
I don't know where you heard that from, but it's not entirely...
No, I think it's
true.
How does it work?
What I'm thinking is that the water slowdown doesn't get applied to tanks essentially, but it does get applied to survivors. So when you have a survivor in water and a tank in water, the tank actually moves faster than the survivor. That's just I believe that's how it's just worked in Left 4 Dead vanilla for the longest time, essentially. Is that tanks aren't really affected by water slowdown, but survivors are. So the tanks, whereas on land, tanks move slower than survivors.
But Grizz tells me to fight tanks in water in EQ. Is Grizz wrong?
No, he's not wrong.
He's not wrong. Well, is there water slowdown? I don't know how that works.
Yeah, there
I want to know.
The tanks, but it's made to be like the sort of same running speed as survivors in water as well.
So it's like a slight increase that they match the move speed of survivors, right? Or am I?
Yeah, around about the same move speed as survivors.
Okay. So fighting tank in water is worse for survivors? Because
It should be
it's
worse
just
for
as good, if
survivors
not.
than EQ.
Yeah.
It's just as good, if not slightly better option, depending on the part of the map. But I mean, it's pretty much the same as like fighting on like just normal ground.
I'm actually so confused. Like, I've confused myself. I'm so confused.
So is there water slowdown in EQ for
For-
survivors?
For both survivors and the tank, yes.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so the tank has water slowdown. It doesn't have increase. Okay. I get it now. I get it.
I'm gonna officially nominate here, as we're with all the
Grizz
config
told me.
developers. I'm gonna officially nominate to change the official competitive config meta to Dark Havoc, and I hope all of you are okay with that.
Knock
I'm
yourself
okay
out.
with that.
Yeah, right. It's like, oh, all right.
Well,
Why not
okay.
just random, man?
Dude, I
Things
actually
go right to
love
random.
random so much. It's one of my favorite things to play. I don't get to play it that much, but
Hey, Kissme, it's already too late. The damage is done.
No,
Can't
it
reword the
didn't have the
question.
effect I want. I'll reword it. Give me a second.
All right, so that means he's gonna. I think what Kissme is trying to get at here is that I don't know.
Can we
Cool.
veto Kiss
To-
Me?
To
Is
me,
that something we can do?
Cool Drake just messages me and it's like that insane level of confusion about water slowdown.
well, okay. Here's the thing, right? Is that I hadn't played much EQ. I play it like occasionally, but I don't know the intimate details of it. Admittedly, but I'd heard that from teams that played in the EQ2 tournament, I believe, that all the North American teams are saying fight tanks in water when you play EQ, blah blah blah. It's OP. That's like all I heard, and so I wanted to hear from the man himself what was going on and like if there was any truth to that or if that was just confirmation bias.
It might be slightly better because with the tank sort of running slower, you might have more sort of like time to sort of shoot at him and do a little bit more damage. But I mean, that doesn't still stop the threat of the SI being, faster in water by a lot compared to the survivors. So, it was a little bit bearable to fight tanks in water, but the SI support could still do a lot and even get damage or wipes occasionally. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't a completely foregone conclusion. It was way OP, at least not from the amount of games I saw of it.
You sound
Yeah.
pretty awake.
I just wanted to, I wanted to hear from you because I'd heard it from other people, and I just wanted to hear it from the source, what was the actual situation. So it seems like people that I talked to over dramatized the situation, but
That never happens in competitive Left 4 Dead 2.
I
People
mean,
never.
I believe-
dramatizing.
People
Yeah.
never.
I mean, I've never heard of people dramatizing things in pro mod either. I can't even think of anything, but
I have to ask. I have to ask
Start
Dragon,
playing more.
because Kissme's gonna start Flame more in a second.
Let's
But
hear
this
it.
is hold on. My question first is actually because I know Dragon's representing him since, according to Kissme, he quote unquote pussied out of this podcast because it was too late for him. But why does Battle detest pro mod so much?
that's a good
Wow.
question.
Because the U.S.
He's
seceded
certainly
from
got
Great
quite a
Britain.
few reasons.
I want to hear Dragon. Yeah.
I think most notably is because he feels like it's pretty much like the same thing that we've all been playing for a few years. That's his honest assessment of it. He just feels like pro mod isn't like a drastic change from Kogle Fresh. The one big change in his mind is the removal of the hunting rifle and obviously the inclusion of a mandatory shotgun with being limited to 3 SMGs. But he doesn't feel like it's a great push or an advancement from Kogle. That's in his opinion.
I would say there's a lot different between pro mod and
Oh, God.
Kogle, but I'm biased in the matter, so I mean, hey, I strongly disagree with that.
Freaking Blade. Battle hates pro mod because we have too much freedom injected.
To me,
I-
neither of their configs really hit the sweet spot for me. But in general, I feel like EQ seems to put a lot of emphasis on teams positioning and sort of the tactical team-based, my positioning, these individual roles, and setting up a lot of team-based strategy for tanks and stuff. And pro mod seems to emphasize what feels to me a lot more like the sort of individual skill components.
Ooh.
Let's talk about your sweet spot, Hank.
My sweet spot. Yeah, it's
Who
right
wants
below
to hit
my.
P-Sim's sweet spot?
Can you send us a picture?
I could draw you a picture.
Oh,
Sure.
God. But yeah, I mean,
I
I
agree
actually,
with that. I think
I
that-
agree with PSIM too. There, I mean, and the thing is, if I'm looking at it from a team perspective in that sense, yeah, ProMod does really emphasize, I would say, the whole individual skill and that kind of stuff. But yeah, I mean, I would have to agree with Prodigy's assessment there.
So to me, it's like like every time I play a pug, I would rather play a pug on Pro Mod than EQ. And so I think for getting new players into the game, I think Pro Mod's a little bit more fun to just pick up and play. But I definitely do value those. There's a lot of value to those sort of team-based tactical strategic things. Like in the past, teams put a lot of effort into like coming up with the exact hits that they wanted to do on, certain choke points and all of these sorts of things. Positioning during tanks being very important, and I don't see a lot of that today in the gameplay, and it's not even rewarded that much in the gameplay. Like, you play Dark Carnival, and it's not like you need to go in with your team and figure out, your exact strats for a lot of these places. I don't know. It's a lot more just going in and playing your best as an individual.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I agree. I would like to see, like, I think that, honestly, I think I'm one of my, like, this sounds a bit cheesy, but I think I'm, like, one of my biggest critics of Pro Mod. Like, I hate a lot of the stuff that, has come from Pro Mod, and I agree with what you say about, sometimes it feels like it's lacking in that depth for the team or whatever. It just kind of becomes, everything, or whoever it may be,
At the same time, I don't think EQ has it, has anything that's really perfect for the team play either. It's, I mean, it seems to me like to do well at EQ, you would have to put in like a lot of time figuring out with your team how to do all these different things, and that's not a lot of. I think a lot of teams don't really want to spend that much time working on those things. So like EQ loses out on the fun factor for me a lot, and it would be nice if there was like a compromise between these two that was where it was rewarding to work on these team strategies in a way that felt, significant. And I don't know if that comes from the config or, tournaments and teams and sponsorships or all of these things, but
yeah.
Neither of them really completely fills the whole picture.
So Dragon, could we see maybe a hybrid config coming between you and Jacob, working together?
Please no.
Honestly, I was talking to Visor a while ago, and I was actually like open to the idea. I was considering asking him about it, but it was kind of like I wouldn't even know where to start, and I have this weird inkling feeling that EQ people hate me, but. I mean, honestly, I'd be kind of open to the idea.
Do EQ people hate Jacob?
I couldn't possibly answer that because I wouldn't know. I mean, I'm interested to know who designates themselves as quote EQ people first.
Well, I would say you
people,
Battle and Visor would be. And I mean, if
Jacob's
still
pretty
around.
easy to hate, right? Like,
I mean, yeah,
I wouldn't be surprised
definitely.
if you say yes.
Well, hate's a strong word, but I mean, I hardly know Jacob, but so
Not strong
as a
enough if you
person
ask
or as
me.
a
I mean, if you guys were to make some sort of hybrid, which config would you build off of? Like, which one would be the grounding?
God,
Like, which one is
Yeah.
closer to the ideals of competitive Left 4 Dead 2?
It's not even a...
Yes, I'm gonna strangle you.
Well, I mean,
if
since
you're
we've already
making
established that, no, I'm actually not going to go there.
Shut the fuck up, Jacob. If you were to make a hybrid config like that, I say fuck it, go back to vanilla and start from scratch. Don't try to base it off of either config.
Well, no, I want to know which
Oh, yeah.
config is closer to the ideals of the Left 4 Dead 2 competitive community.
Kiss me, I'm
Like,
gonna-
which
Oh
one
my
could you
God.
build off?
No, you can't, because it's like you can't even begin to answer that because you can never get unanimous opinion on what comp Left 4 Dead 2
We have a
should
bunch
be.
of-
It's never
This
gonna
is
happen.
like-
Alright,
Okay,
if
you
you
know
were
what
gonna
this
sell
is?
me your
Like,
config,
here-
what would be your selling point?
Wait. Ready? I have a shitty metaphor every week, and I'm gonna make one right now. All right. This is like if you were like, let's make one really good political party. What would we base it off? Republicans or Democrats? Like,
Yeah, well, wait a
you
minute,
can't.
It's...
You just
Now,
Yeah,
who are the
that's a good point.
Republicans in this case?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Who are the
Oh my
Republicans and
God.
Democrats?
I mean, I think it's pretty obvious who's a Republican.
It's okay. The past is over, boys. Everyone go home.
Kissme. We have all these nice, level-headed, rational people here.
then
You're just
I'm
want us
just
to
a
start throwing
sparkle.
punches.
No, what's the one you sent me earlier? Hold on.
I think I asked it.
Okay, I'll hold on.
Oh no. You didn't ask
Oh,
that
God.
one, Kissme.
I don't think.
What Kissme said to me is he wanted me to ask, and I demand a serious answer to this question. So Kissme, I say, all right, Kissme, what should I say next? And he goes, so what you guys are saying is that ProMod is the less skilled config and easier to get into?
No.
No.
I'd say it's the more
Kissme.
individually skilled config, but it is easier to get into. I think that's because of the fact that it's much easier to get into pugs and playing friends only games and stuff than it is to, get a team and practice together with them.
And
It's
Dragon,
more
I have-
important to get good at individual
on-
things in pro mode.
I have a fun thing to ask Dragon.
Okay.
I want you to take one shot at me or ProMod. What is the stupidest thing in ProMod that you want to make fun of?
But I want to make fun of.
Just say Jay.
Yeah, like what's
Oh,
something
God.
in ProMod that like you're like, wow, that is really stupid.
Can you really pick just one?
Oh!
Favorite. Pick your favorite.
Kissme just came, I think.
Oh gee, I don't
Okay,
know.
Kiss
'Cause
me.
I rarely play these days, let alone
Correct.
play pro mods, so...
Yeah.
Oh.
Plus it's almost 4 AM for me, so let me think about this for a minute.
Alright, go for it.
All right, Dragon.
I just think it'd be fun.
Yeah, and then, man, this has been a very, very interesting
I'm
experience
really
here.
mad that throwables are gone. That's my personal thing.
Well, what if I told you? Well,
No, stop.
alright. Left
What
4
if
Dead
you
2
leaked
community, would you hate
information?
me? Would you hate me that much, Left 4 Dead 2 community?
Yeah.
Would you?
Blade just gets yes.
I want bile bombs again.
Yes,
Bile bombs
well-
are my favorite fucking part of
They have
Left
to be
4 Dead 2.
nerfed. All
Would you
throwables
really
have
hate
to be
me, Left 4 Dead
nerfed.
2 community, if
Nerf 'em.
bombs were in the game? Are they that
Nerf 'em.
bad?
Nerf them.
They already are nerfed, okay? Well,
No,
fuck.
different
Alright,
nerf.
fuck it. I'm adding them. They're nerfed, I'm adding them. Deal with it.
Nerfs.
No, seriously, he actually told me that. He told me that he was gonna add them
Yeah,
before
like,
RBT
it's
started.
already-
Like this
it's
has been a
happening,
thing.
okay?
I'm not even.
You know what?
trolling.
I'm just gonna copy
Like-
paste the changelog to you right now,
Please do.
and you can just see it's
Yo,
happening.
yeah, ProMod 4.0 is going to be big because he's putting back in gas cans. They're coming back. He's also putting back in bile bombs, and then I think you're also putting back in 2 tanks per map.
What?
What?
What? Can you quit putting things in my mouth?
So if we want to switch over to EQ, how easy
Or
would
even
that
going
be?
back to the old scoring system.
Putting things in your mouth, huh, Jacob?
I'm just gonna post this in chat, and boom, that's that. All right, deal with it.
Post it. Let's see.
How much our duration?
That's all you need to know. I'm gonna actually explain what that is because
The duration is
basically-
10. Infected gets increased by 10 limiter.
It sounds like the bile only lasts for 10 seconds.
it only
then?
lasts for 10 seconds, and also if your survivors are standing right next to you when you throw it, or like if you throw it on your survivor team, it'll just boom them.
Interesting.
Yep.
That sounds like it could be kind of annoying, but it could also be
So
good.
if there's a zombie like in your face and you throw the bile at the zombie's chin and it hits directly in front of you, you
Yep.
boom yourself.
You will boom yourself.
That is
I'm so fucked.
amazing.
So you have to actually clear yourself, aim it, throw it.
Will it have effect on tanks or not?
I believe it has a reduced effect on infected.
Okay.
Like the actual survivor controlled infected.
And if I'm right, you told me that the gas can changelog. Gas cans will not light tanks on fire. They have increased friendly fire damage, decreased duration, and also decreased damage on SI.
Well, I wasn't really going to talk about gas cans yet, Rails, but since
Sorry.
we're going there, they do. It has a smaller burn radius. It does less damage to regular infected, about half damage to regular infected, about 1.5 damage to survivors, no damage to tank, and it
Sorry.
also gas cans are like scavenge cans, where once you pick them up, they can be burned by spitter.
I just read
Interesting.
chat,
And they don't
somebody,
respawn.
Somebody's like, now it seems like pugs will be even less, or even more unbearable because we people with bile bombs just throwing them and hitting themselves in the face and then running
That
off.
sounds like it'll be
I'm
hilarious. to
hugging
me,
more.
Pugs.
I'm coming.
Dragon, what do you think about throwables?
What I think about throwables, well, I
Any of
actually
them?
kind of liked the bile bomb, to be honest. I think if they had to keep one throwable, it should be that, because, I mean, let's face it, it is a double-edged sword that you're carrying there.
Yeah.
You know, you can easily use it, and you can also easily misuse it. You know, so you've got to be really careful and precise about how and when exactly you use it. So,
But
you
what
know, in a
about
way, I think it could work.
Somebody in
Sweet.
chat goes, Bravo gets the sprint crowner, he gets the bile again.
what were you gonna say about Dragon? Oh my god, I called you Battle.
It's alright, he'll probably hate you for that afterwards.
How does it make you feel that he just called you battle?
Oh, I thought you were in the middle of saying something, Dragon.
And
About
different-
troubles.
No, we're waiting for him to hear this.
We all know Battle's a bastard, so
Yeah.
he hates
fair
it more
enough.
than I do.
Well, you know what's nice is actually I was gonna wait with gas cans and just do bile in 3.8.
Do both. Do both.
And I was
do
gonna
both,
wait with
do both.
gas cans, but now that it's already been revealed, I can like get away with it. I think.
I'm delaying the
Apologies.
spot.
I was gonna like one at a
That's
time.
a good way to frame it.
Like I was gonna put it one at a time so people could like adjust or whatever,
Yo,
and like
put
not
quad
hate
caps
me.
back in.
But you know what? Like if people already know, then it's like whatever. Might as well.
Alright, you want my opinion here?
Blocko just said insert 3 people who pug all day. They'll just throw bio bombs on you whenever you get mad. You mad, bro? You mad, bro?
Oh my god.
No, seriously, the 2 things that I would like to see re-included into the config. Oh boy, I have another question too when I'm done with this. But my personal opinion is I want to see a tank selector used. That's the first thing that I want. I want to see that put in.
Can
I know.
I comment on that?
Sure.
Do it.
Well, Artie was working on a plugin for that, and it was going to be included in ProMod like a while ago. I want to say like 4 months ago now. And we were going to have like we didn't want it in pugs because we didn't want it to be like, I'm Simi, give me this tank. And we didn't
Oh
want
my
it.
god.
You know, we wanted it to be an enjoyable thing for everybody.
No names.
So we were going to have
goddammit.
it. Oops. We were going to have it so that when you played scrims or whatever, you'd call a vote where it'd be like, ! Tank voting, right? And it would pop up a vote, do you want to enable tank voting for this game? And then you'd be able to choose who would get tank on each map. And, you know, it'd be a good thing for teams to practice in scrims, and
Yeah.
whether or not that'd be allowed in tournament matches or not would be a different debate, but it would be a good thing for practicing in scrims.
Oh, I see.
But I'm not sure what the status is on that. I haven't heard from him in a very long time. I think he doesn't like me or something anymore, but
For reasons.
for reasons I don't know.
Jacob needs a PR consultant.
I really do.
24/7. I
I
think.
got
really
this. It's
need-
I
fine.
really need one.
Blade.
Yeah,
because
let the
as you've
ex-hacker.
noticed, I love just saying things and then regretting them after.
This entire cast.
I got this.
Yeah.
It's fine.
But you don't think it would be good for tournament play, or are you kind of
I
considering
think
it
that's
still?
a different debate, because it's kind of. I think you can. It's not really worth arguing that. It's good for scrimming and helping teams get better. If they want to have one person practice a specific tank, then you know that definitely has its benefits.
Yeah,
But
that seems justifiable.
in tournaments, it's kind of iffy because it's like, do you really want to have like your one player who's like the weak link on tank? You always give them Parish 1 tank. Like, is that fair? That's a different debate, you know?
I mean, I know I'd abuse the shit out of that because
Yeah.
I hate doing rock tanks, but I love doing any sort of a close quarters tank.
And the
I
argument
think
for
it
it
would
is
be
that,
cool.
well, I want to play against the other team's like strongest tanks on each map. Like maybe this person
Yeah.
plays a really good rock tank. I want to play them when they're playing the rock tank, you know, or whatever. But at the same time, like you could easily just shove off whoever. You could have an amazing survivor player who's a really shitty tank and just give them Parish 1 tank, and that kind of makes up for that huge weakness in your team. Which I'm not sure if that's something that should be in tournament play or not. That's, you know, I think that's a different discussion.
I
Yeah,
want to see that added. The other thing I want to see added back in is I want to see quad caps. Maybe like not all the time, but a nice like probability of actually having that happen would be cool.
Yeah.
That brings up something that I want to ask about is there's a lot of these features that are just sort of, they seem infeasible to implement, and so they've been avoided because of that. And I want to know from each of you config makers, like, what's something that, you know, if it were possible, if it could be coded for you, that hasn't been possible thus far, what's a feature that you want for the game?
I think you know mine.
Do I?
Yeah, it was something that I didn't think was possible until recently.
But
I don't even remember the tank frustration thing.
Yep, the tank restoration thing.
what is this?
Yeah, it's gonna be tough, but I might find some time to work on it. It's basically changing the tank safe from frustration mechanics to make those safe from tank fights a little less wonky.
Oh,
And
boy.
basically, it was gonna be for on certain maps we would make it so the tank does lose rage while the survivors are in safe room. So
Right.
like notably probably No Mercy 5, maybe Dead Center 1. Those sort of
Yep.
scenarios where, you know, it can easily get into a Mexican standoff. And it's
Right.
not like the fight is terrible for either side if it's in the safe room. So we might as well just, you know, let the frustration tick down and let the fight happen eventually. You know, solve that Mexican standoff that way.
Right. Then same question to Dragon. If there was one feature you'd like to see implemented, obviously it may or may not be in the realm of possibility. What would it be to EQ?
Really, the only one thing I can think about is maybe something which would forced to equalize all the pings between all 8 players present in the team to open up the possibility of like completely even playing field for international competition.
Interesting.
I think that would be something that would help the community
See,
a lot.
the solution I want for that is for there to be LAN tournaments.
Yeah, I
but
really don't like that solution.
that
for
takes
it.
a lot more effort.
It's like I hate playing against people. Like this might be a bit offensive or whatever, but I hate playing against people when they have 180 ping because it's like I don't find it as much fun. You know, it's like I'd rather play against somebody when they're playing at their absolute best, which is on low ping, obviously.
Or when I can hit them.
And yeah, or when I can hit them, or not get punched from 3 feet away, or not 3 feet, 3 yards, whatever, whatever you want to call it. Americans, right? And
what Kissme?
I want to. I don't know. I feel like.
Go ahead, Jake.
I feel like it would be less enjoyable the more people that are higher ping. Like the only way you could do that is to increase everybody's ping to the highest ping. And it's like the more people on high ping, the less enjoyable the game would be for me. I don't think I would play any international matches at that point.
It's interesting because it would certainly solve. I wonder. I don't know. That's such an interesting thing. I'm gonna have to think about that some more. But yeah, it's certainly like playing high ping against low ping, or even high ping against high ping. It changes so many like little things in the game, to where like there's some things that are more advantageous on high ping and some things that are less advantageous on high ping, and it's really unfortunate that there's that metagame on top of everything else that we have to deal with.
If we have a LAN, I want to see Dragon and Jacob fight. Winner gets universal control over the kick.
Dude, I have to say though, I've played on LAN on 2 occasions essentially in the GXL for a couple of years, and it's the best experience I've had playing the game ever. Not just because, you know, I'm in person with my teammates and stuff. It's just like, you know, when you lose a match in Left 4 Dead, you can usually think of like 1 or 2 things where it's like, you know, this punch missed and you really didn't think it should have, or oh, I got skeeted when I was already on this guy, or my jockey M2 ended up really weird and I got shoved off him after I already landed on him. All those little things that just are so frustrating. And even when I lost on LAN, it's like there was 0 things I had to complain about during the game. The other team just played better. There was no question in my mind, and it was the most enjoyable Left 4 Dead experience I've ever had.
Experience, I think you can say.
And I really wish everybody else could experience LAN play because it's fucking amazing.
Yeah, I can imagine. That would be pretty nice.
Not for nothing, Sivo is actually teaming up with GXL, and Sivo's upcoming tournament not tournament, their season, it will actually be held at GXL, the Grand Finals. So it's actually Sivo's first ever LAN tournament finals. I know Lang and some of the other production guys from the TF2 scene helped out with them a lot. So maybe someday we could see a Left 4 Dead 2 LAN happening. I mean,
maybe. I just want to point something out here, like
what
something that my friend actually brought up. He doesn't really watch, or he like watches Comp L4D, but he hasn't played Left 4 Dead in probably 4 or 5 years now. But I don't know if you guys like follow other games that much, but for example, like Smash just recently started getting like big sponsorships, or Super Smash Brothers, whatever. And like they have some pretty big sponsorships, and like their fan base is growing a lot. And I mean, they were a small cult group of people playing that game for a while, you know. I mean, like their community, they had a decent amount of viewers, you know, but they didn't have that many players, and it's really starting to grow now. So I think like even if, you know, Left 4 Dead 3 doesn't come out for 5 years from now or whatever, I think as long as we keep playing the game and like, you know, we keep having these people in the community who are willing to help out, and people continue running tournaments and putting in that effort, like you never know, like I'm not saying we're going to get sponsored or anything like that, but you never know, like opportunities could pop up down the line where people see potential in the community. So
there's certainly a new game. I mean, Left 4 Dead 3 is going to happen at some point. We don't know what it'll bring, but I mean, I think a lot of us have felt like we've been waiting on Left 4 Dead's big break for a long time. But you know, the opportunity is going to come when we can grow this community and make something much better out of it, and we need to be ready for that. So yeah, all the people putting in their time, like an admin decision going wrong or a config doing something you don't like, just try to remember on top of all of that there's this bigger picture game going on, is that we're trying to make it so you guys can get the recognition you deserve for being so good eventually, and to do that we kind of have to have these things, even if they're not done perfectly. Like all of this effort is just hugely important for that end.
And I can actually say here, I don't know if this is a I don't know if it has anything to do with the quality of the config or not, but the EQ number 3 grand finals that recently just occurred here, even though Left 4 Dead has been out for what, like 5 years now. Dragon, how many different streams do we have for that game going on?
We had 4 streams.
Yeah. So that's like 4
Did you
concurrent
cross the
streams at the same
streams?
time. Yeah, we did. We crossed all of
totally
them.
crossed the stream.
There were 4 going
I
on at
heard
the
you're
same
not supposed to
time
do
Never
that.
crossed the streams.
Yeah, you're not supposed to do
in
that.
3 different languages and stuff like that. So that was like probably either a tie for the most covered tournament of all time, or tournament match of all time, or the second most covered tournament match of all time, depending on what Kissme told me earlier about that Russian game. But definitely for an English language based tournament, that was incredible. So I mean, as PSM said, there's definitely a larger picture to be thought of here and stuff, and that's going to be an interesting question here. And I know these podcasts are only supposed to go for an hour, but we've broken that time limit both weeks now by a lot. I think we're just going to say screw the hour time limit. Then this could really be for anybody who's here. But then when you see shit, this is going to be a loaded question. When you see Left 4 Dead 3 coming out, where do you think the config is going to go from there?
I've actually already talked to Visor about this, and I've talked to other config developers as well, and I'm opening this to Dragon as well. I want to work together. I don't want it to be like some stupid, like, in my opinion, ProMod and EQ, we're both just trying to make something that people like, and I don't see it as like a competition or anything stupid like that. So I think when Left 4 Dead 3 comes out, we should work together on making the best config possible. And I think that at the start, that's going to be making a base like Metafogl, and from there, if we expand and, we go off and make 2 different configs again, then that's fine. But I think that at the beginning, our efforts need to be focused on one config that is appealable to everyone. I think that it'd be a really big mistake to jump out the gates and start having 3 different configs, and like all these people who look to get into competitive Left 4 Dead 2, it's like, oh, so this is what people play. Well, they play this and this and this, I think that it would be best for everyone if we just work together going into the future.
God,
So,
I really wish I could just like quit my job and work on Left 4 Dead 2 configs and stuff, because I mean, the best way to have a singular config, in my opinion, at this point that appeals to everyone is to follow the same model that we've seen Valve and Riot doing in their games a huge amount, which is you have massive data collection about everything that's happening in your games, and you come up with these you do basically data-driven design is what it's called, which is you come up with a hypothesis, which was something like, I think people will play more games. People will play more games if we introduce this change, and then you introduce that change to some extent, let it go for a few weeks, see whether or not that helped the game, and then analyze it from that point and continue making more hypotheses and testing them based on data like that. And I think that's really necessary, because we have some broader goals that we can test, right? Like things like we want to get people to stay for the full game in public games.
Yeah.
We want people to start more pugs, or we want survivors to survive through all of these maps because we think that's going to be more fun or something like that. We want the games to be more even, and we really need some level of data collection to start making those types of changes. But man, I don't know, man. It seems like so much.
Quit your job. Quit your job. Quit your job.
I don't think that's a possibility at this
Was
point.
that not Kissme making bad ideas? God, that's weird.
What was that?
Oh no.
What was the last bad idea I ever had?
The last bad idea. Oh god.
Don't even go there. Just shut up. Go on.
Let's take it. Let's
We
take
have
a
a truce,
back
let's
in
move on.
time about 5 minutes ago.
Yeah, that 5 minutes
That was
ago
like
where
2
you were
hours
trying to
ago.
start a flame war.
Oh, that wasn't an idea. That was a remark.
God damn it. Oh, Kissme.
Okay.
Kissme, if you were to develop a config, what would you call it?
Pokemon.
What?
What?
None of you get it?
I have
Pokemon?
I have an idea.
None?
You called it
I have a
Pokemon?
question.
I would. None of you got
catch
it.
them all?
Yeah, I don't get it.
What's up, Jacob?
This is something that my friend actually just messaged me. Is why I know PSM, you're a bit familiar with the Dota scene. You know what IXDL is?
Yes.
Why do you think nobody's really done something like that for Left 4 Dead? And do you think it would be
Please, I'm
successful?
lost.
So you might have to give me a few more details about IXDL, but IXDL was basically like a special config of Dota, and they came up with a league specifically for that.
It's basically like a client where you go in, you have like you sign up for a lobby, right? And then it puts all of you into a game, and it picks teams based on like your ranking. And basically, whether you win or lose, you gain plus 10 or lose 10 rank. Or if the other team is like a lot better than you, you gain more rank and whatnot. And basically, it's like pugging, but every time that you win, you gain rank, and you lose rank when you lose.
So, I mean, the basic practical question of why it doesn't exist for Left 4 Dead is simply because there's no way to make a sustainable amount of money off of that or anything. I don't know if IXDL directly makes money for the people who are doing it, but basically, it's with the small amount of community that would be serving, it's really hard to justify that for looking good on a resume or making ad revenue or anything. I think those things would be great to do, but for me personally, it sounds just like this daunting project to do something like that.
That kind of goes back to something you were talking about earlier, where it's like for me, if I see a project that I want to work on for pro mod, it's kind of like I have to look at how long it'll take me compared to like, is it worth my time to do? Because it's like I could put in, 2 weeks worth of nonstop work on something, and then everybody could hate it. It would be a complete waste of my time, and it's like you could put a ton of time into making, an IXDL for Left 4 Dead, and then nobody plays it, and you wasted a bunch of your time and effort that you could have been putting into other stuff.
It's a lot of risk to work on any project, and you have to feel like it'll pay off in some way. I mean, and we've discussed doing stuff like that. Like, I've talked with Astupi, Canadarox in the past, a lot of people about doing systems like that, and it's just, it's so huge, and it's not like any of us, like, I have a few years of software engineering under my belt, but it still feels like maybe now it's a little less daunting, but it's just such a huge task, and we don't have, that's one of the reasons I think that our community could really do well to attract more developer and config maker sorts of types, is because like Jazzy showed up to the community, and I believe he's a software developer by profession, and he'd actually been doing it professionally for some time.
He works for Sony in real life, so
and he came in and he did some really amazing things for the game just by having him there, and we need to attract more people like that is the one part of it. And the other part of it is those of us who are here, we got to figure out how we can get things like that done. And honestly, Left 4 Dead 3 I think brings more challenges rather than less challenges, because if Valve's not doing first party competitive support and we have to come up with it from our own side, like there's so much infrastructure we need to be able to have to support that. And
not to mention if they take it like the Dota route, like it'll be a lot harder, in my opinion, to do it then. Because, like, I think you've seen how a lot of people with Dota 2 have been having trouble with just getting modding even working on a basic level, where, it's not necessarily that it's hard to mod the game, it's just hard to get people into those modded games,
Sure. Does IXDL have modifications? I forget.
No.
I guess it doesn't then.
Yeah, they might do, like, some, like, weird, random, like, reverse captains and stuff like that, but I don't think they play any, like, actual modded configs.
Yeah, and another thing to note about making systems like that, or like in TF2 you have TF2 Center, and you have TF2 Lobby, those sorts of systems that are essentially just like glorified pug makers. They're actually easier to implement for games like TF2 because you have a single map, and your config is essentially just like execing a CFG file. And so the way that those sites end up working is you give them a server IP and you give them Archon access, and they set everything up themselves. They don't have to upload, 50 server plugins that modify the game, and they don't have to, configure all that, do memory patching, have a match mode that spans over multiple maps. It's just a lot simpler of a game format to support with those sorts of things than Left 4 Dead 2 is, where we have multiple maps to track data across. You have, multiple maps and so many modifications to the game to make it even competitive. And so it's like if we did that for just vanilla, it might be a little easier. It still wouldn't be easy as TF2, But like the fact that we have so many modifications on top of it is, it just adds to the complexity so much.
Yeah. And hopefully for those configs in the future too, then different kind of those data collection. I know I talked to Sideways Box, obviously our lovely admin of H2K. He, and one of our community leaders, I can also say, he's definitely interested in getting that kind of data collection system working there. And that would also, he said, see, the thing is though, I am always more interested to hear about what happens for the team scene and not the pug scene. I don't know about you guys. I know pugs are a main part of, like, obviously the community and stuff like that for people to play constant games, but I want to get back to the point where I see teams staying consistent and then scrimming a lot. And I know I can be to blame for that as well, because I've been on 3 different teams in the past 3 tournaments. But I mean, obviously I'm hoping to continue now for CCT3, which is of course on the horizon, is going to be something, you know, to continue and make a team with and stuff. But my whole point is that I want to see that data collection stuff being put to the point where we can have constant scrims happening and things like that instead of just the pugs. That's just my opinion.
See, to me, I kind of look at it in the opposite direction. Like, the end goal is that, I mean, I think the end goal is the same, that we want team play, we want tournament play, we want sponsorships, we want all of those great esports aspects for the game. But what I see as important in getting to that point is not as much what we cater to those teams for. Like, catering to the top teams doesn't increase the player base, it doesn't increase the fan base. It just increases, you know, how much the top teams like the game.
I didn't mean care to the top teams. I meant like care to the fact where we can see a bunch of teams come together and that kind of stuff.
So to me, like, getting the pugging infrastructure to be really good is important because, I mean, if you look at Dota, for example, the game isn't balanced around the top teams for the most part. It's important to some extent, but the game is just generally balanced for people to be able to come in and have fun with it, playing with their friends. Have a good time and have a fairly competitive environment in that sense. And then it's up to the top teams to sort of respond to that config and prove that they can be the best at that.
Right.
So, yeah, I don't know. I think it's really important that we have ways for people to come into the game and have fun playing it no matter what. Because that's how you get people to... I mean, it's very hard to have any sort of competitive game, particularly with video games, where you get spectators who don't actually play the game themselves. So it's important to me that people enjoy playing the game and have outlets to do it in a somewhat competitive sense.
I'd actually argue that Dota's... I mean, I'm not even trying to... I think it's actually balanced around like the top 2% at least, because, I mean, you see heroes like Wisp and Earth Spirit who... I mean, this is totally a tangent. Sure. I don't know, it's just ranting, but... like, those were heroes who are around 40% win rate in pubs, but, like, in competitive play, they're completely broken. Like, Wisp was nerfed even though he was only 40% win rate, and he dropped all the way down to, like, 35% win rate in pubs. But in competitive play, he still picked a lot. And I think that the goal for Dota is to aim for balance on the top level, but then also make it enjoyable for everybody below that.
Sure. Yeah, it's a balancing act between the two. I'm sort of wrong for saying that you're supposed to ignore, like, really emphasize one over the other as more important. But yeah, like, neither of them should monopolize. You need a balance of the both to have a sustainable competitive game.
Definitely.
But I mean, there are differences in like tournament play from regular play, right? I mean, normally public games are played on all pick or something like that. There is some captain's mode in public play, but I mean, generally captain's mode is...
Yeah, all pick make us up for like 60% of games played or something ridiculous like that, 70%. So, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, I would say like the all pick is like your pug config, and then captain's mode is like your tournament config. The difference between them isn't very great, but there is at least some distinction there, right?
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yep.
I remember back in the day, actually, this is a little bit of a rant, sorry.
Oh, God.
But back in the day, they actually had like tournament version and latest version for Dota. I don't know if you remember back then. I don't know if you even played back then. But...
In Dota 1?
In Dota 2. It was a Dota 1 thing that carried over to Dota 2, where the most recent version of the patch wouldn't be played in tournaments until maybe a month after it had been released.
Oh, right. I remember they wouldn't include heroes and stuff for a while.
Yeah.
That's about all I know of that. I think in CSGO, they've actually been explaining a lot of their balance decisions and stuff their blog, so that's a good place to see some of their insight. And then that one, I feel like they've been focusing on public play a little bit more. They've been focusing on competitive matchmaking again, but they've been talking about trying to increase weapon variety and stuff, and that's mostly sort of that's something that, weapon variety is not necessary for competitive play, but it does add to fun theoretically in public play. So.
Yep, and I'm going to be that guy because I am looking at the time check here. I know it has to be somewhere past 4 o'clock in the morning for Dragon, so I know we have that going on. We've also been here for a couple hours. We like to usually keep it around this time frame. So I do have one final question I'm going to go around and ask our panel here, and it's a general question, obviously you can kind of fill in. We've touched on it a little bit already, but I'm going to start with Blade. Blade, where do you see the future of the Left 4 Dead competitive community going from this point?
I don't really know. Like I said, I originally thought since I left that provided it stuck to the same way, it would only go downwards, but it looks like that more commitment to infrastructure saw a rise, especially along with the free Left 4 Dead from Valve, so I assume that helped things as well, but I really can't say for sure.
Yeah, I definitely see there are a lot of efforts being made in that skyward direction. Jacob, same question to you.
I think that where it goes is really up to us. I mean, that sounds so cheesy, but it really is. It's like, if people put in the effort, like this game's been around for what, 5 years now, and it's still going. I mean, I think if the game was going to die on its own, it would have by now. I think there's a lot of people who really love this game, and I think as long as we keep putting in the effort, it's going to keep going. And I think that the day that people stop putting in the effort and stop caring is the day that we'll start seeing that downward spiral, but I don't see it happening anytime soon.
Exactly. PSM, same question.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen it be on the downward spiral for long amounts of time, and it's every time it's been someone like, Router Pixies or Blade or Jazzy and Dragon who have come in and done something that have put life back into the game, and right now we're seeing more people doing that than ever. Like what Kissme has managed to do, is like huge in bringing some life back into the game. And it's like each of these people have come in and they face a lot of flack and negativity, but as long as we try to keep those people happy and keep working on improving the game, we can make something out of it ourselves. So I'm hopeful and actually willing to bet a bit more on us having more success in the future.
I would say so as well. And Dragon, finally, same question to you. I know it's late where you are. Where do you see us going?
Well, to be honest, I think we've got quite a bright future ahead of us, if you ask me. I think the real telling point will be the release of Left 4 Dead 3. I think Left 4 Dead 2 didn't quite have the same structure at the beginning of its life like it does right now. And the main thing is just keeping that going on and on. I don't see why that can't happen, to be honest, because, I mean, considering, like, as a few of you mentioned already, that this game's like 4 or 5 years old now, but it's still going. It's had its couple of shaky moments where it's been close to death, but, it keeps coming back alive and kicking. And I just think that with the cohesive structure we have right now, with more unity between, like, the communities all around the world, I think Left 4 Dead 3 will have a major chance, probably an even bigger chance than Left 4 Dead 1 and Left 4 Dead 2 combined, I dare say. But it needs the sort of right mindset to sort of drive it forwards. And I think with what Kissme is doing right now with the streaming, with what people such as like Visor and Jacob are doing in regards to config development, what people such as Prodigy Sim have done in the history of this community as well has been tremendous. And as well as other people doing their specific fields, we've got great potential, and it takes is that same like encouragement and that determination to drive the whole thing forward. And I think that will happen, but we just got to wait and see for what Left 4 Dead 3 has in store for all of us.
I know you want to end this, Reels, but I really want to know. I think you put a lot of emphasis on L4D2 there, and to me it's still up in the air about what that game's going to look like. And I'm wondering if you're sort of expecting Valve to. What do you think we're going to get in competitive play from Valve's side on that? Like, are you expecting that there's going to be, matchmaking and stuff, or are you just thinking that the game's going to bring more users?
I wouldn't jump in the gun so much, but about Valve's part on it. But I mean, if the game is to be one of the first Valve games, if not the first one on the Source 2, then that in itself might be a tantalizing prospect for potentially new players and new members for the competitive community. And even if Valve don't throw their entire weight behind the competitive community, I mean, it might not be ideal, but as we proved with the Left 4 Dead 2 community itself and through its history, we've actually done pretty well for ourselves, I believe. It's not all perfect and it's not all ideal at some points, but we've still done a pretty good job, I think, overall.
So even if Left 4 Dead 2 is a like casual game by all regular standards, I suppose you feel like we still have a good chance of making competitive a part of it on our own.
I think it was a slight chance, yeah. I mean, we have to wait and see what actually happens with Left 4 Dead 3 and what that brings to the table. I mean, we can't make any rash predictions, but I'd like to think that, if whatever happens, there still should be a reasonable chance of something pretty good on the horizon.
I think,
definitely.
Like, look at Smash, for example. Like, I'm going to bring that up again. Like, that game,
Someone's been
it
reading
was
chat.
very casual from, the developer standpoint. Like, they don't approve of Project M at all, which is like the competitive, it's like the equivalent of Pro Mod, right? They don't approve of that at all. And they didn't for a long time. I'm not sure if they've changed their mind now, but with the latest version of Smash, they've brought competitive more into their mind, and they're actually like running tournaments for it, and they're like listening to pro player feedback, and they're having these pros come and test these new characters I'm making. And I mean, I obviously don't expect that level of, work from Valve with us, but I honestly think that Valve, they know about competitive Left 4 Dead 2, they're not blind. If they're going to make Left 4 Dead 3, they're going to look around at Left 4 Dead 2, and they're going to look at what they did wrong. They're going to look into how they can improve it. And they're going to see, I mean, the people who've stuck
They're
around
going to see all the
longest,
guns and throwables removed.
Yeah, they're going to see all the guns and throwables removed. They're just going to give us a set of pills, and that's it. No, I honestly think that they're going to see that, these people really love playing the game, and, we may not be the huge majority of the community right now, but, I mean, I would say we're a pretty decent percentage of the community that's left right now. And I think that they'll see that, and they may not necessarily give us the full support that we're looking for, but I think that they'll be more willing to throw us a bone with Left 4 Dead 3, I think. So I'm looking forward to it.
Fuck that, I want a flamethrower, man.
I think that while I mean Project M, and I mean Melee's gotten some resurgence in first party support, but the thing that made Nintendo actually start looking at that was not just a little bit of competitive play, the same level of competitive play, it's that Melee actually like achieved a huge amount of growth before this next Smash Bros came out, and they looked at that and saw that there was potential for competitive play and gave more weight to it. So I think it's really important that we try to grow as much as we can in Left 4 Dead 2 still.
Yeah, exactly. And
to demonstrate that this is an important part of the game, even without their help.
Right, and that's going to come in definitely from, obviously, people who put their time into the configs, as Dragon did mention, Kissme for the streaming, the admins of the tournaments, putting more tournaments together, and that's a nice way to, I think it's a nice way to definitely say that. It's actually an optimistic note here after all that lovely conversation that we had earlier, because Kissme is a fucking fire starter. But
I already, I just like, my jabs at EQ or Dragon or whatever, they were just in, friendly jests, so, I hope that, everybody understands that, like, I respect everything that has been done in EQ and all the work that's been put into it, because I've been there and I know that there's things in Pro Mod that people don't like, and obviously we would have one config if we agreed on every single thing. So I think that even though Kissme was a fire starter or whatever, I think that it was fun to talk about stuff. And
if you guys are really at each other's throats, I wouldn't have started anything or even attempted to start anything. The fact is, we're all friends here. We have been for a long time. And over these past 6 months, I feel that the border has been...
What are you talking about? I just met Blade.
Well, Blade's a hacker, so he's not really friends with anyone.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Shots fired. Yourself, Kissme. Holy shit.
But no, I mean, we're all friends here.
that note,
Really smooth, Kissme. Really smooth.
Yeah,
actually, I
really
have a question for Blade.
Go,
How did
go,
we
go.
still lose that match when you were hacking?
Did we?
Yeah, we lost on Swamp Fever.
I don't know. You guys are
No, dude.
trash cans. No,
You were the
I
HR. You were the HR.
I got
You were the HR on Swamp Fever with no bushes. How did we lose?
Oh Oh my
There's
god.
literally no way I can miss.
Were you
It
eating
was-
pizza
guys-
at the time or
You
something?
are
Like,
literal garbage cans.
no. Okay, you know what? Actually, it was Ning
You're
Ning. It was
act-
Ning Ning. Okay, it was Ning
It
Ning.
was
I heard a
We were-
rumor that Ning Ning actually, he likes to ring.
We had
Can I
Ning
get a
Ning ringing
confirm or
for
deny?
us, okay? It was Ning Ning's fault.
Ning Ning does like to.
I'm just gonna blame it on him.
Oh my
He's not here to defend
goodness.
himself, so.
That's
God.
always good.
You
saw
guys
that.
were literally garbage cans.
Wow.
Like actual cans of
Dude.
garbage.
I was the.
I'd dump my
Frickin'
trash
best.
in Jacob, if you know what I mean.
Oh, baby.
Alright, that's it.
Oh,
Alright,
wait,
so...
one more
cut
thing I
the
want to say.
meat,
One more thing I want to
boys.
say before we
What?
end. One more thing. It's unrelated to Left 4 Dead 2, but
Fuck me.
kind of related. The International is in 2 days, or 3 days rather, in Seattle. You know, obviously, everybody. Well, some people know about that.
Uh-huh.
I'm gonna be there, and I'm going out Thursday in 2 days. I'm gonna be there early afternoon. So if anybody's in the area and wants to meet me or hang out or something, then just hit me up. I'll be there.
Battle,
Yeah,
I'll be there
cool.
Did
too.
you just use my
And
stream as a
that-
fling?
dude.
I did.
Battle is gonna no, you know what, you just screwed yourself because Battle's gonna hear you're gonna be there. Now he knows exactly where to show up to get you for all
was
the
gonna
shit that you just
say-
talked about.
Wait,
EQ.
Battle's gonna be there?
No, he will make a way to be there though.
Hit me up though, and on Thursday I'm down to hang out with anybody. But for the rest of the weekend, I'm gonna be busy, kind of with the Dota thing. So
And please
if
no,
anybody wants to hang out though on Thursday, hit me up.
please no stalking on config devs with cameras and stalking them in cafes and streets.
Yes.
Look, if you want me to make a pro mod change, just come up to me and say it. You do not need to kidnap me. You do not need to hold me at gunpoint. I
Hank-
will
If
do
you
it.
have a choice in the matter.
Hank,
Whatever
please
you
watch
want.
your
Give us
butt.
surprise hug.
What? Kiss me?
Hank, please watch
My
your
butt.
butt.
Yeah, please.
If we lose
Antero,
Hank, I'm
Antero told me
upset.
he's gonna come find me at TI4. He said he's gonna give me a surprise hug. I'm looking forward to it, actually.
Who is?
Antero.
Oh wow, dude.
That's what that was a reference to.
That's
It's the
pretty-
picture
Yeah,
you
the
took last year.
pictures.
Yeah, that picture, dude, it was so fucking funny. I don't even know, man.
A
I'm just
wild
glad that
piece
he
of
doesn't know,
emphasis.
like he doesn't know what I look like, so he never got a picture of me.
Law.
Don't you have long dark hair?
What? No.
Thicker than Zen.
No, I never saw Zen's pic.
All right then. So thank you everyone here for deciding to join us here on this wonderful panel. These are honestly, I'd say, the smartest people in the entire Left 4 Dead 2 and / Left 4 Dead 1 / Left 4 Dead 3 future community here. The people we have in this mumble just do the fact with the effort and time that you got to dedicate to the community. And obviously, I know some of you have probably gotten a fair amount of shit from them for it, but on the inside, I'm sure all of them deep down do appreciate it. And obviously, most of us, while they may not be vocal, there are a lot of people in the community who definitely appreciate all the hard work that you guys put in. And I think it was amazing to actually hear over these past couple hours, not only what we think about the future, but the entire history of the game explained by the people who actually did it. And that was the whole point of having you guys on. So, Kissme, I'm going to toss it over to you here.
For the record, I want to point out I hate every single one of these devs.
Feelings mutual.
You guys took all the
yeah.
fun out of this game. When you removed something, you removed fun.
Kissme's just like a necessary evil. Nobody
Does he
really
really
likes
have
him.
to be
Wow.
I mean,
He was threatening
well,
I never
my
said I didn't
things
like
much
you
when I was,
guys.
like in high school.
well,
So he's
It's-
fucking
no one
what's the
else is
definition
going to suck
necessary,
dicks.
really? I mean, I don't know. I mean,
Wait,
we got
Kissme,
how many smart people do we have in here? I think Reels just said there were like what, 4?
I only
5
count
smart
5
people in
because
here?
I'm not smart.
Yeah, so I mean,
We got like 2, maybe.
I'm sure we can find some way to replace him with all of our great minds.
There you go. The last. Here, you guys start here. The next config update's going to be removal of Kissme.
I'm actually gonna add
Kissme's
that
banned.
to
Dude,
the-
Config.
I will come back for that.
Speaking of which, Zombie Bat coming soon. Stay tuned.
What?
Zombie Bat coming soon. Stay tuned.
Oh my
You
god.
Zombie
don't know about Zombie Bat?
The fuck is this?
How do you?
What?
Jesus Christ! You
Is
guys
that
missed
like
out on a
Tank Ball?
piece of history. Man, I can't believe you guys don't know about Zombie Bat. It's been in the official pro mod changelog like 5 times. Man, whatever. You guys are lame.
What's zombie bat?
I'm retarded.
Zombie Bat. Okay, it's a really cool infected idea I had, where it's kind of like a jockey, except for we're gonna like update the model, right? And whenever you spawn in, you grab somebody and you can fly them up in the air, and your teammates have to clear you before you get too high up, or else it's just like an in cap because you just fall and get in
Alright,
capped.
you're fucking
And
dumb.
It's like, no, because here's the idea, right? You know, with the
Cut the
hunter, you get more
stream.
damage. Hear
We're
me out.
done.
With the hunter, you get more damage over time. Like, you get 5 damage per second. But with the jockey, or the zombie bat, the higher you get up, the more damage it is. So it's like the same idea of damage per second. And if you take too long, they just die.
Uncapped pounce damage. I'm mad.
Maybe with zombie bat we can, finally. And then we can have some sweet combos. That'll be pretty cool.
Wombo combo. Lucky feet.
So yeah, stay
just
tuned
say
for zombie
Lucky
bat
Feet?
coming soon.
Did you just say lucky feet?
I don't know what that is.
kill yourself,
Lucky
seriously.
feet. That's not Falcon. That is
Oh
not
my
a
God.
Falcon right there.
I'm done. Fuck you guys.
I thought it was
God.
Falco.
Wompy combo.
That's not Falco.
Blade just left. Blade's done. He said, "Fuck you guys," and left.
I love Super Smash Bros. It's my favorite game.
I'm done too. Alright, so thank you everybody here for watching and tuning in, and we don't know what the topic is going to be next week, but I'm sure we'll have another interesting... I don't know if it's going to top this or not. I mean, I'm sure somebody else is eventually going to say fuck you and leave the mumble too, so I think we're pretty much at that point. So yeah, again, thank you Dragon, Prodigy Sim, Jacob, and of course Blade, who is gone, for coming on to talk about all this wonderful history. I'm sure those who were listening deeply enjoyed it as much as I did hosting it. And yes, Kissme, do you have any other closing words here?
Yeah, as always, shout out to leftfootednation.com, watch leftfooted.com, the L2L, the H2K, the Serve Please, the A4D, all those good networks. Topic for next week will be all the toxic players and hackers who have ever crossed the community in one Mumble channel, no holds barred, and I'm gonna just walk away from my computer and let them go at it.
We'll let Rails deal with the rest.
I wouldn't recommend being here, but Blade will be back for that because he's a hacker. And yeah, thank you guys for tuning in as always.
Did anyone tell Blade that he got unbanned, by the way?
I don't think we want to know.
What?
Did we tell him that he got unbanned?
He's still in my chat.
Who's Blade?
The one hacker.
Some hacker.
Prodigy, what's LARP?
Every config dev ever has one kryptonite saying PSIMS
I
is
think there's a lot of
about
them.
LARP.
There's also fucking Fix It.
Jacob, can you fix my
Oh
stream?
my god.
Dude, I'm so sad that I actually inherited Fix It. I thought that was just like a PSIM thing, and then when people started saying Fix It to me,
so wrong.
No.
What's Dragon's kryptonite phrase?
I'm fucking tired to think of mine.
At least
Sounds so bad.
Does it
Like
involve...
4 foot.
Never mind. We're
don't-
done taking shots.
I made sure when Left of the Nation was having problems, I never told PSIM to actually fix it. I made sure I never said those words to you. I was like, we should like call a company and have them, make it better.
Mitigate the problem. Shoot.
But,
Mitigate it, PSIM.
Correct the error.
But yeah, thank you for tuning in.
People,
and of
people are
course,
asking
thank
if
you.
that's the actual topic for next week. It should be.
I would love for that to happen, but I probably couldn't stand any of those people. Because
Alexi21 is saying that because that sounds like the most entertaining Left 4 Dead 2 related event ever. It would be to have all those all those who are either accused of hacking. I'm gonna go try to find Nate.
Find Zentai.
Oh my god.
That's my favorite one.
Get my time in.
Because he banned me from L4D now for making a config change that sought out hackers. And he made a big shit about it and banned me and Canadarox from L4D now for trying to make an anti-cheat into Kogle. And then he got caught hacking a few weeks later. It was so fucking hilarious.
Were you really that upset about Left 4 Dead now, though? I mean, looking back on
Come
that
on,
thing.
man. I mean, no, I mean it's just the same as it's just the same as Blade, right? It's like big parts of the community giving you negative feedback for things that you feel like are positive effort,
That's true.
And it does piss me off. It pissed me off a lot.
I know I sowed your
Alright.
guts that entire website. Whenever I
Yeah,
talked to him,
the
I was like,
website was
"So
pretty
Left 4 Dead
terrible."
now."
Alright, so I think... Yeah, I don't know if that topic is real for next week, but we sure will find out.
I'd love to make it happen, but I don't think I would bring that upon you guys. I don't think that'd be fair.
Dude, I would love it. Are you kidding me?
You don't understand the amount of hell that would break loose in the matter of that 10 minutes of conversation.
It would just be a 10-minute long podcast, and we would have...
But yeah, thank you guys
Oh,
for tuning
God.
in. Thank you to everyone that obviously came on tonight. Dragon, Hank, Peace, Jacob Rails, and Blade. I think you're still in the chat. If you're not, you're still a hacker, so that's not changing anything if you left. But yeah, so we'll do the same thing next week, around 9 o'clock on Tuesday. Not too sure what the topic is as of just yet. I have to think of something creative. Or if you guys have any suggestions, put them in chat. Probably not going to do that hacker, douchebag
Symposium.
thing. I don't think that's going to happen. But, I don't know. If you guys ever want us to interview some teams, we always get some teams together and interview them.
Could also just send more players to interview as well.
Yeah, we do like the team captains of the top 4 NA teams or whatever's floating your guys' boats. But yeah, thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you guys next week.
See you later.